blue train, a sapphire jewel speeding through the night, its first-class carriage dripping with wealth and secrets. Hercule Poirot, the master detective, steps aboard, drawn by a cryptic warning of a shadow lurking among the elite. Then, a scream pierces the silence. Madame Meer, a ruthless blackmailer, is found strangled in her locked compartment, a pearl earring and a mysterious glove marked LV at the scene. Who is Vincent, the passenger who never appeared? As clues, unraveled drugged wine, a hidden passage, whispered Detsborough uncovers a web of betrayal where everyone hides a motive. But wait, the killer's identity is a twist so shocking. It's hidden in plain sight, wearing a mask no one suspects, until now. Chapter 1. The departure from Victoria. The air at Victoria Station hung heavy with the mingled scents of coal smoke, perfume, and anticipation. It was a crisp morning in early spring, the kind that promised renewal but carried a chill that clung to one's bones. The platform, a bustling artery of London's great railway hub, pulsed with life. Porters darted with precarious stacks of luggage. Travellers in furs and tweeds exchanged hurried farewells, and the great steam engine of the blue train, that paragon of luxury, gleamed under the weak sunlight filtering through the station's vaulted roof. Its sapphire carriages, polished to a mirror-like sheen, stood ready to whisk the elite to Calais and beyond, to the sun-drenched Riviera or the shadowed intrigues of European capitals. Hercule Poirot, diminutive yet commanding in his immaculate black suit and patent leather shoes, stood apart from the throng. His mustache, waxed to precise points, quivered slightly as he surveyed the scene with eyes that missed nothing. The little Belgian detective, renowned for his fastidiousness and his unparalleled little grey cells, had not planned this journey. A letter, delivered to his London flat 2 days prior, had altered his course. Written in a meticulous hand on heavy cream paper, it bore the signature of Madame Elisabeth van der Meer, a Dutch widow of considerable wealth and, if rumour were to be believed, formidable character. The letter hinted at a matter requiring discretion, and genius, qualities Poirot possessed in abundance. Though vague, its urgency intrigued him, and so here he was, ticket in hand. Preparing to board the blue train, he adjusted his Homburg hat, ensuring its angle was just so, and glanced at his pocket watch. The train was due to depart in precisely 12 minutes. Poirot disliked haste, but he abhorred tardiness even more. With a nod to the porter who had deposited his modest valise in compartment 12 of the first-class carriage, he ascended the steps, his movements deliberate, almost ceremonial. The interior of the carriage was a study in opulence. Polished mahogany panels, plush velvet seats in deep indigo, and brass fittings that caught the light like miniature suns. Poirot approved. Order and elegance were the cornerstones of a civilized life, and the blue train embodied both as he settled into his compartment. Arranging his few possessions with geometric precision, a silver-backed brush, a leather-bound notebook, a single rose in a slender vase, he felt a faint prick of unease. It was not the journey itself, nor the cryptic nature of Madame van der Meer's summons, that troubled him. Rather, it was a detail gleaned from the porter, a wiry man with a Cockney accent and a habit of chewing his lower lip. The last seat in the first-class carriage, number 16, had been booked at the 11th hour, mere hours before departure. The name attached to it, Vincent, was unfamiliar, and the passenger had yet to appear. Poirot's mind, ever attuned, two anomalies lingered on this irregularity. In his experience, last-minute bookings on such a train were rarely innocent. They suggested urgency, secrecy, or both. He stepped into the corridor, his polished shoes silent on the thick carpet, and cast a glance toward compartment 16. The door was closed, the brass number plate gleaming. No sound emanated from within. No hint of occupancy. Poirot's mustache twitched. He would make inquiries, but discreetly. For now, he returned to his compartment, where the porter had left a copy of the Times. He scanned the headlines: political squabbles, a scandal in Mayfair, a storm brewing in the Channel, but his thoughts remained with the absent passenger. Who was Vincent, and why had they secured the last seat? The train's whistle pierced the air, a sharp summons that sent stragglers scurrying. With a gentle lurch, the blue train began its journey, gliding out of Victoria Station with the grace of a swan. Poirot leaned back, allowing the rhythm of the wheels to soothe his senses. He had always found trains conducive to thought. Their steady motion, like the ticking of a metronome, sharpened his focus. He opened his notebook, its pages pristine, and jotted a single word: Vincent. Beneath it, he added a question mark, then closed the book with a snap. The first-class carriage was a microcosm of wealth and influence, its occupants a carefully curated selection of the privileged. Poirot, ever the observer of human nature, looked forward to studying them. He had already glimpsed a few as he boarded. A ruddy-faced Englishman in a tweed suit, bellowing instructions to a porter. A young woman with the poise of an actress, her emerald eyes shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. And an American, lean and restless, whose nervous energy seemed at odds with the train's serene elegance. Madame Vandermeer, he assumed, would be among them, though he had yet to meet her. Her letter had included a photograph of a stern, handsome woman in her 50s, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that held a glint of steel, but photographs, Poirot knew, revealed only surfaces. He decided to venture to the dining car, where the passengers would gather for luncheon. It was an opportunity to observe, to listen, to detect the undercurrents that always flowed beneath polite conversation. The dining car was a vision of decadence. Crystal chandeliers swayed gently with the train's motion. White linens draped the tables, and waiters in crisp uniforms moved with the precision of a ballet. Poirot took a seat near the center, where he could survey the room without drawing undue attention. His waiter, a young man with a faint French accent, presented a menu embossed with gold. Poirot selected a light consomme and a glass of mineral water. Simplicity, he believed, allowed the mind to remain unclouded. The first to enter was the Englishman, whom Poirot soon identified as Lord Edward Carlisle, a peer known for his investments in colonial enterprises and his fondness for fine spirits. His laugh, loud and unself-conscious, filled the car as he regaled a waiter with a story about a hunting trip in Africa. Next came the young woman, Mademoiselle Clara Duval, whose entrance drew every eye. Her dress, a shimmering green silk, clung to her figure, and her movements carried the studied grace of the stage. She smiled at Lord Carlisle, but the smile did not reach her eyes. Poirot noted her hands slender, adorned with a single sapphire ring, but trembling slightly as she adjusted her napkin. The American, Mr. Samuel Kessler, arrived next, his suit impeccably tailored but his demeanor uneasy. He glanced about the car as if expecting pursuit, his fingers tapping a restless rhythm on the table. Poirot observed a curious detail. Kessler's cufflinks bore a monogram, LV, in ornate silver. A coincidence, perhaps, but Poirot filed it away. Finally, Madame Vandermeer entered, her presence commanding silence. She was precisely as her photograph had promised, tall, regal, draped in furs despite the mild weather. Her eyes swept the room, lingering briefly on each passenger before settling on Poirot. She inclined her head, a gesture both courteous and imperious, and took her seat at a table for one. The occupant of seat 16, however, was conspicuously absent. Poirot inquired with the head waiter, a dour man named Monsieur Dubois, who confirmed that Vincent had not yet appeared. The reservation remained, the table set, but the chair empty. Poirot's unease grew. He sipped his consomme, its clarity a contrast to the murky puzzle before him. As the meal progressed, he listened to the ebb and flow of conversation. Lord Carlisle spoke of a new railway venture in India, his voice carrying a note of bravado. Mademoiselle Duval responded with practiced charm, her laughter bright but brittle. Kessler said little, his attention fixed on his plate, though Poirot caught him stealing glances at Madame Vandermeer. She, in turn, ate sparingly, her expression unreadable. Once, when a waiter dropped a spoon with a clatter, she flinched. Small, involuntary movement that Poirot noted with interest. After luncheon, as the passengers dispersed, Madame Vandermeer approached Poirot's table. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice low and accented with the soft cadence of her native Dutch, "I am glad you accepted my invitation. May we speak privately?" He rose, bowing slightly, and followed her to a quiet corner of the lounge. Car, where velvet curtains framed a view of the passing countryside. "I fear for my safety, monsieur," she began, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "There is a shadow on this train, a shadow that follows me." Her eyes, sharp and searching, held his. "I cannot say more now, but I beg you to watch, to listen. There is danger here, and I trust only you to uncover it." Poirot inclined his head. "Madame, you have my word. Hercule Poirot does not ignore such warnings. But tell me, do you know of a passenger named Vincent?" Her face paled, though she recovered quickly. "No," she said, too quickly. "I know no one by that name." She rose, smoothing her furs. "We will speak again, monsieur. Be vigilant." With that, she departed, leaving behind the faint scent of jasmine and a host of unanswered questions. Poirot returned to his compartment, his mind a whirl of impressions. The absent passenger, the monogrammed cufflinks, Madame Vandermeer's ferule were threads in a tapestry he could not yet see. He opened his notebook again, adding to his earlier entry. Madame V fears a shadow, LV significant. He underlined the initials, then closed the book, his fingers lingering on its leather cover. The train sped on, its wheels a steady counterpoint to Poirot's thoughts. Outside, the English countryside gave way to the coast, where the grey waters of the Channel loomed. He sensed that this journey, like the train itself, was more than it appeared. The blue train carried not only passengers, but their secrets, their fears, and perhaps their crimes. And Hercule Poirot, with his unerring instinct for truth, would unravel them all as evening approached. The carriage grew quiet, the passengers retiring to their compartments or lingering in the lounge. Poirot decided to make one final circuit before dinner. The corridor was dimly lit, the brass fittings casting soft reflections. He paused outside compartment 16, his hand resting lightly on the door. It remained closed, silent, a cipher in this unfolding drama. He knocked softly, but there was no response. With a sigh, he turned away, resolving to speak with the conductor, Meer, a nervous man whose darting eyes suggested he knew more than he let on. Meer, when found, was polishing a tray in the dining car. "Monsieur Vincent," he repeated, his lip twitching. "No, monsieur, I have not seen him. The reservation was made by telegraph, very late. I assumed he would board at Dover." Poirot's eyes narrowed. Dover was the next stop, where the train would meet the ferry to Calais. If Vincent appeared there, Poirot would be ready. He returned to his compartment, but sleep eluded him. Instead, he sat by the window, watching the twilight deepen over the fields. The blue train, with its gleaming exterior and hidden currents, was a stage, and he, Hercule Poirot, was its most attentive audience. The curtain had risen on a mystery, and he would not rest until it was solved. The train's whistle sounded again, signaling the approach to Dover. Poirot rose, straightened his tie, and prepared to meet whoever waited. The last seat on the blue train held a secret, and he was determined to uncover it. Chapter 2. The passengers. The blue train glided through the twilight, its wheels humming a steady rhythm against the tracks as the English coast faded into a blur of grey and green. Hercule Poirot, seated in the opulent dining car, sipped his mineral water, his eyes flitting from one passenger to another with the precision of a jeweler inspecting rare gems. The carriage, with its crystal chandeliers and starched linens, was a stage for the elite. But Poirot knew that beneath the polished surface of wealth and civility, secrets festered. His task was to observe, to listen, to detect the faint tremors of deceit that betrayed the guilty. The absence of the mysterious Vincent, occupant of the last seat, lingered in his mind like an unresolved chord. But for now, he turned his attention to the cast before him. The dining car was nearly full, its tables occupied by a select group whose wealth and status had secured their places on this luxurious journey. Poirot had chosen a seat near the center, unobtrusive yet commanding a view of the entire room. His notebook, discreetly tucked into his jacket, bore the names he had gleaned from the conductor's ledger and his own observations. Lord Edward Carlisle, Mademoiselle Clara Duval, Mr. Samuel Kessler, and Madame Elisabeth van der Meer. Each, he sensed, carried a story, and one or more held the key to the shadow Madame van der Meer had spoken of. Lord Carlisle was the first to draw Poirot's notice. The Englishman, broad-shouldered and florid, sat at a table near the window, his tweed suit slightly rumpled from travel. His voice, booming with the confidence of inherited privilege, carried across the car as he recounted a tale of a fox hunt. "Gone awry, the beast led us a merry chase, I tell you," he bellowed, his laughter echoing off the mahogany panels. His dining companion, a young man in a waiter's uniform, nodded politely, though Poirot noted the waiter's eyes glaze. With boredom, Carlyle's hands, thick and calloused, gestured expansively, a gold signet ring glinting on his finger. Poirot observed the man's ease, but also a certain restlessness, glanced toward the door, a tightening of the jaw when a waiter passed too closely. Was it mere impatience, or something deeper? Mademoiselle Clara Duval entered next, her presence like a sudden shaft of light. She wore a gown of emerald silk that shimmered with each step, its cut accentuating her lithe figure. Her hair, a cascade of auburn curls, was pinned beneath a velvet hat adorned with a single ostrich feather. She moved with the grace of a dancer, or perhaps an actress accustomed to commanding attention. As she took her seat 2 tables from Poirot, she offered a smile to Lord Carlisle, who raised his glass in salute. Yet Poirot saw what others might miss. The smile was calculated, her eyes darting to the empty table reserved for Vincent, before returning to her menu. Her fingers, adorned with that single sapphire ring, toyed with the stem of her wineglass, betraying a nervous energy. Poirot made a mental note. Mademoiselle Duval was no stranger to performance, but was she playing a part now? Mr. Samuel Kessler, the American, slipped into the car with less fanfare. His suit, charcoal grey and impeccably tailored, spoke of wealth, but his demeanor suggested unease. He was lean, almost gaunt, with sharp features and eyes that never rested. He chose a table near the rear, his back to the wall, a position Poirot recognized as that of a man who disliked surprises. Kessler's fingers drummed a staccato rhythm on the tablecloth, and his cufflinks those monogrammed LV. Initials caught the chandelier's light. When a waiter approached, Kessler started, his hand jerking to his pocket before he recovered with a forced smile. Poirot's mustache twitched. The man was nervous, perhaps guilty, but of what? And why did those initials, so close to the mysterious L. Vincent, appear on his cuffs? Madame Vandermeer's entrance was a study in contrast. She swept into the car with the dignity of a queen, her furs trailing behind her like a royal train. Her face, framed by a high-collared dress of midnight blue, was striking rather than beautiful, with cheekbones sharp enough to cut glass and eyes that held a quiet intensity. She paused at the threshold, her gaze sweeping the room, lingering briefly on each passenger before settling on Poirot. He felt the weight of her scrutiny, as if she were assessing his worth. She took her seat, alone, at a table set for one, and unfolded her napkin with deliberate care. Her movements were precise, but Poirot noted a faint tremor in her hand as she lifted her water glass. Fear, he thought, or perhaps anger. Madame Vandermeer was a woman of secrets, and Poirot intended to uncover them. The table for L. Vincent remained empty, its silverware gleaming untouched. Poirot signaled Monsieur Dubois, the head waiter, who approached with a deferential bow. Monsieur Vincent has not yet joined us, Dubois confirmed, his French accent clipped. The reservation was made by telegraph. Very late, but no one has claimed the seat. Poirot nodded, his mind turning over the possibilities. A no-show was unusual on the blue train, where every seat was coveted. Was L. Vincent delayed, or was the name a fiction, a cover for some darker purpose? As the meal progressed, Poirot listened to the undercurrents of conversation. Lord Carlisle's anecdotes grew louder with each glass of claret, his tales of colonial ventures tinged with a boastful edge. The natives, you see, they respect a firm hand, he declared, oblivious to the tightening of Mademoiselle Duval's lips. She responded with a quip about the unpredictability of human nature, her voice light but her eyes hard. Kessler, meanwhile, ate sparingly, his attention divided between his plate and the door. Once, when a waiter dropped a tray with a crash, Kessler's hand shot to his pocket again, and Poirot glimpsed the outline of something angular, small book, perhaps, or a case. Madame Vandermeer remained silent, her eyes fixed on her soup, though Poirot sensed she was listening as intently as he. The dining car, with its glittering facade, was a microcosm of society's upper echelons, but Poirot knew that wealth did not shield one from deceit. He recalled Madame Vandermeer's words, a shadow on the train. Was it one of these passengers, or the absent L. Vincent? He resolved to speak with each, to probe their stories, but first he would observe. The little grey cells, as he often said, required data, and the dining car was a rich source. After the main course, poached salmon for Poirot, served with a delicate dill sauce, he excused himself and strolled to the lounge car, a haven of velvet armchairs and low tables where passengers lingered over coffee and liqueurs. The lounge was quieter, its atmosphere intimate, and Poirot chose a seat near a window where he could watch without being watched. Mademoiselle Duval entered soon after, a cigarette holder in hand, though she did not light it. She settled into a chair, her posture relaxed, but her eyes scanning the room. Poirot noted her glance toward Kessler, who had followed her in and now stood at the bar, ordering a whiskey. Their eyes met briefly, a flicker of recognition, or was it suspicion, passing between them. Lord Carlisle joined them, his face flushed from wine, and launched into a story about a duel fought over a woman's honor in his youth. Damned fool thing to do, but what's youth for? He chuckled. Mademoiselle Duval laughed, but Poirot saw her fingers tighten around her cigarette holder. Kessler, sipping his whiskey, said nothing, though his ticker slight twitch at the corner of his mouth betrayed his discomfort. Madame Vandermeer did not appear, and Poirot wondered if she had retired to her compartment or was avoiding the others deliberately. He approached the conductor, Meer, who was adjusting a curtain near the bar. Meer was a slight man, with a nervous habit of chewing his lip, and his eyes darted to the side when Poirot mentioned Vincent. "I know nothing more, monsieur," he said, his voice strained. "The ticket was paid for, the seat reserved, but no one has come." Poirot pressed gently, asking if anyone had inquired about the seat or lingered near compartment 16. Meer hesitated, then admitted to seeing a cloaked figure near the luggage car before dinner, though they had vanished when he approached. "It was nothing, monsieur, surely," he added, but his unease was palpable. Poirot returned to his seat, his mind alight with possibilities. The cloaked figure, the empty seat. The monogrammed cufflinks each was a piece of a puzzle, but the picture remained elusive. He opened his notebook, adding to his earlier entries, cloaked figure in luggage car, Kessler's tic, Duval's tension. Madame V avoids others. He underlined LV, then closed the book, his fingers tracing its leather spine. The train sped on, its rhythm a steady pulse through the darkening night. Outside, the stars emerged, faint pinpricks against the vast sky. Poirot leaned back, his eyes half closed, but his mind was far from rest. The blue train was a world unto itself, a gilded cage carrying its passengers toward their destinations, perhaps their fates. The shadow Madame Vandermeer feared was here, among them, and Poirot would not rest until he brought it into the light. As the lounge car emptied, he rose, intending to check compartment 16 once more. The corridor was silent, the other passengers, retired or scattered. He paused outside the door, his hand hovering over the handle. No sound came from within, no sign of life. He knocked, a soft tap, but there was no answer. With a final glance, he turned away, resolving to watch and wait. The mystery of the last seat was deepening, and Hercule Poirot was determined to unravel it before the train reached Calais. Chapter 3. The first clue of blue train sliced through the night, its wheels a relentless cadence against the tracks, carrying its passengers deeper into the French countryside. Hercule Poirot, restless despite the late hour, lay in his compartment. The velvet curtains drawn against the moonless dark, the opulence of the train, with its polished brass and plush upholstery, did little to soothe the unease that had settled over him. Madame Vandermeer's warning, shadow on the train echoed in his mind, entwined with the enigma of the absent passenger, Vincent, whose empty seat in the dining car had become a silent accusation. Poirot's little grey cells, ever active, churned through the details. The monogrammed cufflinks on Mr. Kessler, Mademoiselle Duval's guarded glances, Lord Carlisle's bluster, and the conductor Pierre's nervous demeanour. Each was a thread, but the pattern eluded him. Sleep, usually a disciplined ally, refused to come. The train's rhythm, soothing to some, only sharpened Poirot's focus. At precisely 1:17 a.m., as recorded by his pocket watch, a sound pierced the quieter muffled cry, sharp and fleeting, from somewhere down the corridor. It was not the wail of a child or the laughter of a reveller, but something raw, urgent, and abruptly silenced. Poirot sat up, his heart steady but his senses alert. He slipped into his silk dressing gown, its monogrammed HP gleaming faintly in the dim light of his compartment's lamp, and stepped into his polished slippers. Order, even in the face of potential chaos, was paramount. The corridor of the first-class carriage was hushed. The only sound, the distant hum of the engine and the soft creak of the train's frame. The brass numbers on the compartment doors glinted in the low light, marking the private worlds of the passengers. Poirot moved silently, his steps cushioned by the thick carpet, toward the source of the cry. He estimated it had come from the direction of compartment 16, the elusive Vincent's domain. As he approached, his eyes caught a faint irregularity on the floor, a small object, half hidden in the shadow of the doorframe. He bent, his movements precise, and retrieved it. A single glove, black leather, finely crafted, with a subtle embroidered monogram on the cuff, LV. Poirot turned the glove over in his hands, his fingers tracing the stitching. It was a man's glove, judging by its size, but the leather was soft, almost delicate, suggesting wealth or refinement. The monogram, identical to the initials on Kessler's cufflinks, was no coincidence. Yet Madame Vandermeer's initials were Evie, ruling her out as its owner. Had Vincent, the phantom passenger, left this trace, or was it a deliberate misdirection? Poirot slipped the glove into his pocket, its weight a tangible reminder of the puzzle's complexity. He knocked softly on the door of compartment 16, but, as expected, there was no response. The door was locked, the interior silent. He made a mental note to request the conductor's master key at first light. Returning to the corridor, eyes scanned the surroundings. The other doors, those of Lord Carlisle, Mademoiselle Duval, Mr. Kessler, and Madame Vandermeer, remained closed, their occupants presumably asleep. Yet the cry had been real, not a product of imagination. He moved toward the end of the carriage, where a narrow passage led to the luggage car. The door to the luggage car was slightly ajar, a breach of protocol that piqued Poirot's curiosity. He pushed it open, revealing a dimly lit space stacked with trunks and valises, their leather surfaces gleaming faintly. The air was cooler, here tinged with the scent of polished wood and metal. As he stepped inside, a faint rustle caught his attention, a sound like fabric brushing against fabric. He froze, his senses straining. "Who is there?" he called softly, his voice calm but firm. No answer came, but the silence felt charged, as if someone had just retreated. He moved deeper into the car, his eyes adjusting to the shadows. Near a stack of trunks, he noticed a small irregularity, a silk scarf, caught on the edge of a crate, its vibrant red a stark contrast to the muted tones of the luggage. He retrieved it, noting its quality and the absence of any monogram. It was not Madame Vandermeer's. Her preference for furs and muted colors ruled that out. nor did it seem to belong to Mademoiselle Duval, whose style leaned toward elegance rather than flamboyance. Another clue, perhaps, or another distraction. Poirot returned to his compartment, the glove and scarf now safely stowed in his valise. He sat at the small writing desk, his notebook open before him, and recorded his findings. Muffled cry, 1:17 a.m., near compartment 16. Black glove, monogram, LV, found outside. Red scarf, in luggage car. No sign of Vincent. He paused, his pen hovering, then added, "Someone moves in the night. Who?" The cry, the glove, the scarf each was a fragment, but together they hinted at a presence, a shadow. Just as Madame Vandermeer had feared. Dawn was still hours away, but Poirot knew sleep would not come now. He dressed meticulously, choosing a charcoal suit and a tie of understated silver, and prepared to face the day. Breakfast in the dining car would provide an opportunity to observe the passengers anew, to gauge their reactions in the light of the night's events. He suspected the cry had not been a dream, and the glove was no accident. Someone on this train was playing a dangerous game, and Poirot was determined to uncover the rules. At 7:30 a.m., the dining car was a quieter affair than the previous day's luncheon. The chandeliers glowed softly, casting a warm light over the tables, but the atmosphere was subdued. Lord Carlisle was present, his face slightly puffy from the previous night's indulgences, sipping coffee with a scowl. Mademoiselle Duval, in a simple but elegant cream blouse, toyed with a croissant, her eyes darting to the door with every new arrival. Mr. Kessler, seated alone, was absorbed in a newspaper, though Poirot noted his fingers trembling slightly as he turned the pages. Madame Vandermeer, however, was absent, her table empty. The sight sent a prickle of alarm through Poirot. He signalled Meer, the conductor, who approached with his usual nervous gait. "Madame Vandermeer has not come to breakfast?" Poirot inquired, his tone mild, but his eyes sharp. Meer shook his head, his lip twitching. "No, monsieur. I knocked on her compartment at 7, as she requested, but there was no answer. I assumed she wished to rest." Poirot's moustache quivered. "Assumed, monsieur. Assumptions are dangerous. We must check at once." He rose, motioning for Meer to lead the way. The other passengers glanced up, their curiosity piqued, but Poirot ignored them. His focus was singular. Madame Vandermeer, the woman who had summoned him, was in danger or worse. They reached compartment 14, Madame Vandermeer's assigned space. Poirot knocked, first softly, then with increasing urgency. Silence answered. "Open it," he commanded, his voice low but unyielding. Meer fumbled with his master key, his hands unsteady, and the door swung open. Inside, the compartment was a scene of frozen horror. Madame Vandermeer lay on the narrow bed, her furs discarded on the floor, her face a ghastly mask of terror. A thin cord, black and silken, was knotted tightly around her neck, her eyes wide and unseeing. Poirot stepped forward, his expression grave but composed. He examined the scene without touching anything. The cord was expertly tied, the knot precise. A half-empty glass of wine sat on the bedside table, its contents undisturbed, and on the floor, near the bed, lay a single pearl earring, its luster stark against the carpet. Poirot's eyes narrowed. The earring was not Madame Vandermeer's, her. Jewelry, visible in the open case on the dresser, favoured diamonds and sapphires. Summoned the train's doctor. Poirot instructed Meer, who stood frozen, his face pale. "And seal this compartment. No one enters or leaves until I say." Pierre nodded, stumbling from the room as if pursued. Poirot remained, his gaze sweeping the scene. The window was bolted shut, the door had been locked from the inside, yet Madame Vandermeer was dead. Strangulation, he deduced, required strength and intent, but the locked compartment suggested cunning. He bent to examine the door frame, noting a faint scratch near the lock, barely visible. A tool, perhaps, or a sign of forced entry. He filed it away, along with the earring, the wineglass, and the cord dot. The train's doctor, Dr. Lefebvre, arrived promptly, a dour man with a lined face and steady hands. He confirmed Poirot's suspicion: strangulation, with death occurring between midnight and 2 a.m., based on the body's rigidity. No other marks, Lefebvre added, his voice clipped. The cord was the weapon, and it was swift. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. The cry he had heard fell within that time frame. Was it Madame Vandermeer's final gasp, or something else? The glove, the scarf, the earring, each clue pointed to a presence, a shadow, moving unseen. And Vincent, the absent passenger, loomed ever larger in his thoughts. He turned to Pierre, who hovered in the doorway. "The passenger list, monsieur. I must see it again. And tell me who had access to this carriage during the night." Pierre swallowed, his eyes darting. "Only the staff, monsieur. Myself, the night porter, and the dining car waiters. The passengers were in their compartments, or so I thought." "So you thought," Poirot echoed, his tone gentle but cutting. "We shall see." As Dr. Lefebvre covered the body with a sheet, Poirot stepped into the corridor, the glove heavy in his pocket. The blue train, with its gleaming facade, had become a stage for murder, and the first Clutha, monogrammed LV, was a thread. He would follow to its end. The shadow Madame Vandermeer feared had struck, and Hercule Poirot would not rest until he brought it into the light. Chapter 4. The locked compartment. The blue train pressed onward through the French countryside, its sapphire carriages cutting a sleek path beneath a sky now streaked with the pale light of dawn. Within the first-class carriage, however, a chill, far colder than the morning air, had settled. Madame Elisabeth Vandermeer lay dead in her locked compartment, her lifeless form a stark rebuke to the train's veneer of elegance. Hercule Poirot stood in the corridor outside compartment 14, his expression as unyielding as the polished mahogany walls around him. The discovery of the murder had transformed the journey into a battlefield of wits, and Poirot, with his meticulous mind, was already marshalling his forces. The conductor, Pierre, stood trembling nearby, his face ashen as he clutched the master key that had unlocked the grim scene. Dr. Lefebvre, the train's door physician, had completed his preliminary examination and now lingered, his medical bag clutched like a shield. Poirot's eyes, sharp and unblinking, swept the corridor. Noting the closed doors of the other passengers' compartments, Lord Carlisle, Mademoiselle Duval, Mr. Kessler, all presumably still unaware of the tragedy. Or were they? The little Belgian detective distrusted assumptions, especially in the presence of murder. Pierre Poirot said, his voice low but commanding, "You will ensure no one enters this compartment until the authorities are notified at Calais, and you will bring me the passenger list, tout de suite. I must know every detail of this Vincent who has not appeared." Pierre nodded, his lip twitching as he hurried away. Poirot turned to Dr. Lefebvre. "Monsieur le Docteur, you are certain of the time of death, between midnight and 2 a.m. Lefebvre inclined his head, his expression sombre. Oui, Monsieur Poirot. The rigor and the body's temperature confirm it. The cord was tight, the act deliberate. She would have lost consciousness quickly. Poirot's moustache twitched. Quickly, yes, but not without a struggle, perhaps. And yet, the compartment was locked from the inside. The window bolted. A puzzle, Nan. He stepped back into the compartment, his movements precise, as if navigating a chessboard. The scene was undisturbed, save for their entry, Madame Vanda. Meer's body on the bed, the black silken cord around her neck, the half-empty wine glass on the bedside table, and the pearl earring glinting on the carpet. The scratch on the doorframe, faint but unmistakable, drew his eye once more. He crouched, examining it closely. It was not deep, but fresh, suggesting a thin blade, perhaps used to manipulate the lock. He rose, his gaze shifting to the wine glass. Its contents, a deep burgundy, were untouched since the discovery. The glass's rim clean, save for a faint smudge of lip rouge. Madame Meer, he recalled, wore no such colour. Her lips, even in death, were pale. The earring, too, was an anomaly. Her jewelry case, open on the dresser, contained no pearls, only diamonds, sapphires, and a single emerald brooch. The earring belonged to another, but who? And why was it here, in a locked compartment? Poirot's thoughts were interrupted by Pierre's return, the passenger list clutched in his trembling hands. "Here, monsieur," he said, offering the ledger. Poirot scanned it, his eyes narrowing at the entry for compartment 16, Vincent. Booked by telegraph, London to Calais. No further details, no address, no nationality, no indication of whether the passenger had boarded. He handed the ledger back, his expression unreadable. "Tell me, Pierre," he said, "who had access to the keys of this carriage last night, and do not omit the staff." Pierre swallowed, his eyes darting to the floor. "Only myself, monsieur, and the night porter. Jacques. The waiters from the dining car have no keys, but they pass through to serve. No one else could enter without permission." "No one else," Poirot echoed, his tone gentle but laced with skepticism. "And yet, Madame Meer is dead." "We shall see, monsieur, we shall see." He dismissed Pierre and turned to Doctor Lefebvre. "You will remain here until I return. Touch nothing." The doctor nodded, his face grim, and Poirot stepped into the corridor, closing the door behind him. The other passengers would soon awaken, and he intended to gauge their reactions before the news of the murder spread. A murderer, he knew, often betrayed themselves in the first moments of shock or the absence of it. He knocked first on Lord Carlisle's door. "Number 10. The Englishman's booming voice answered, thick with sleep. "Who the devil's that?" The door opened to reveal Carlisle in a crimson dressing gown, his hair dishevelled, his eyes bleary. "Poirot, what's this about? Man, it's barely dawn." Poirot inclined his head, his expression neutral. "A matter of urgency, monsieur. I must ask where you were between midnight and 2 a.m. Carlyle's brow furrowed, his ruddy cheeks flushing. "In my bed, of course. Had a devil of a time sleeping trains. Too damn smooth, if you ask me." "Why? What's happened?" Poirot studied him, noting the genuine confusion in his eyes, but also a flicker of unease. "A tragedy, monsieur. Madame Meer is dead." Carlyle's jaw dropped, his hand gripping the doorframe. "Dead? Good God, how? Heart attack or some such?" "Murder," Poirot said simply, watching the man's reaction. Carlyle's eyes widened, and he took a step back, his hand fumbling for a chair. Murder, on this train. Preposterous. But his voice trembled, and Poirot noted a sheen of sweat on his brow despite the cool morning. Next, he approached Mademoiselle Duval's compartment. Number 11. Her response to his knock was swift, the door opening to reveal her in a silk robe. Her auburn hair loose about her shoulders. Her face, bare of makeup, was pale, but her emerald eyes were sharp. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice steady but guarded. "What brings you so early?" "A grave matter, mademoiselle. Madame Vandermeer has been found dead, strangled, in her compartment, which was locked." Duval's hand flew to her throat, a gesture Poirot found both theatrical and instinctive. Strangled. Mon Dieu, that's horrible. Who could do such a thing? Her eyes searched his, but Poirot detected a calculation behind her shock. He asked her whereabouts during the night, and she replied smoothly, "I retired after dinner, perhaps 10 o'clock. I heard nothing, saw nothing. The trains. Motion lulled me to sleep." Poirot nodded, his gaze lingering on her hands. No rings today, but a faint bruise marked her wrist, hastily covered by a sleeve. "You knew Madame Vandermeer, perhaps?" he asked, her lips parted, then closed. "Only by sight," she said, her voice a shade too quick. "We exchanged pleasantries, nothing more." Poirot thanked her and withdrew, his mind noting the bruise, the hesitation, the absence of the sapphire ring she had worn at dinner. Mr. Kessler's compartment, number 13, was last. The American answered after a long pause, his face drawn, his eyes bloodshot. "What is it?" he demanded, his voice rough. Poirot repeated the news, watching closely. Kessler's ticked a twitch at the corner of his mouth, intensified, and his hand went to his pocket, as it had in the dining car. "Murder," he said, his voice low. That's awful. I was in my compartment all night, playing cards with Carlisle earlier, but I turned in before midnight." Poirot's eyes flicked to Kessler's cufflinks, the LV monogram glinting. "You are certain, monsieur? No disturbances, no sounds?" Kessler shook his head, too quickly. "Nothing. I slept like a log." But his fingers continued their restless dance, and Poirot sensed a lie. Returning to the corridor, Poirot found Pierre waiting, his face still pale. "The passengers are stirring. Monsieur, what shall I tell them?" "Nothing," Poirot said firmly. "The truth will spread soon enough, but for now, we observe. Bring me the night porter, Jacques, and any waiters who worked the dining car." After 10 p.m. As Pierre hurried away, Poirot stood alone, his mind a whirl of details. The locked compartment, the scratch on the doorframe, the pearl earring, the wine glass, the glove with its LV monogram, the red scarf in the luggage car. The cry he had heard at 1:17 a.m. aligned with Dr. Lefebvre's timeline, but the locked door posed a riddle. How had the murderer entered and exited, and why leave the earring, a clue so blatant it seemed almost deliberate? He recalled the service panel Pierre had mentioned in passing, a narrow access point between the luggage car and the first-class carriage. It was a possibility, one he would investigate. For now, he returned to compartment 14, where Dr. Lefebvre stood guard. "One more examination," Monsieur Poirot said, stepping inside. He studied the wine glass again, noting the smudge of lip rouge. A test, he decided, was necessary. He would request Dr. Lefebvre to analyze the wine for traces of poison or sedative, a hunch, but one worth pursuing. As the train sped toward Calais, Poirot felt the weight of the mystery deepen. The locked compartment was no mere obstacle. It was a challenge, a taunt from a cunning mind. The shadow Madame Vandermeer had feared had struck, and the clues left behind the glove, the scarf, the earring were pieces of a puzzle only Hercule Poirot could solve. He straightened his tie, his resolve as firm as the steel tracks beneath the train, and prepared to face the passengers once more. The truth, he knew, was hidden among them, and he would find it before the blue train reached its destination. Chapter 5. The actress's secret. The blue train thundered through the French dawn, its sapphire carriages gleaming under a sky now tinged with the first hues of rose and gold. Within the first-class carriage, the air was thick with unspoken tension. The murder of Madame Elisabeth Vandermeer, casting a pall over the opulent surroundings. Hercule Poirot, standing in the corridor outside the sealed compartment 14, felt the weight of the mystery pressing upon him. The locked door, the silken cord, the pearl earring, the smudged wineglass, the black glove with its LV monogram, and the red scarf from the luggage car, these were the fragments of a puzzle that refused to cohere. Yet Poirot's little grey cells were undeterred, sifting through each detail with the precision of a master watchmaker. The passengers, now aware of the tragedy, had retreated to their compartments or gathered in the dining car, their faces a study in shock, fear, or studied indifference. Poirot knew that among them lurked a murderer, their composure a mask for guilt. His first task was to probe deeper, to uncover the secrets each carried. Mademoiselle Clara Duval, the French actress with her emerald eyes and practiced charm, was his starting point. Her reaction to the news of the murder, those trembling hands, the bruise on her wrist had piqued his curiosity. She was a performer, accustomed to deception, and Poirot suspected her role in this drama was more than incidental. He found her in the lounge car, seated alone near a window, a cigarette holder poised between her fingers, though it remained unlit. Her cream blouse and tailored skirt were understated compared to the previous evening's emerald gown, but her elegance was undiminished. The morning light caught the auburn strands of her hair, lending her an almost ethereal quality, yet her posture was tense, her eyes fixed on the passing landscape as if seeking answers in the blur of fields and villages. Mademoiselle Duval, Poirot began, bowing slightly as he approached. "May I join you for a moment? There are matters we must discuss." She turned, her smile swift but strained. "Of course, Monsieur Poirot, though I fear this is a grim morning for conversation." Her voice, melodic with its French lilt, carried a note of caution. Poirot took the seat opposite her, his hands folded neatly on the table. "A grim morning indeed, mademoiselle. The death of Madame Vandermeer is a tragedy that demands answers. You told me you knew her only by sight, yet I sense there is more to your story. Will you share it with Hercule Poirot?" Her eyes flickered, a momentary lapse in her composure, before she regained her poise. "I've nothing to hide, monsieur. I met Madame Vandermeer briefly in Paris, at a charity gala some months ago. We exchanged pleasantries, nothing more. I was shocked to learn of her death strangled. You said, it's unthinkable." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Unthinkable, yet true. Tell me, mademoiselle, where were you between midnight and 2 a.m. last night? The time, I am told, when the crime occurred." She hesitated, her fingers tightening around the cigarette holder. "As I said before, I retired to my compartment after dinner, around 10. The train's motion is soothing, and I slept deeply. I heard nothing, saw nothing." Her voice was steady, but Poirot noted the slight tremor in her hand, the way her eyes avoided his. And this, he gestured subtly toward her wrist, where the sleeve of her blouse had ridden up, revealing a faint bruise, purple against her pale skin. An injury, perhaps, from the night. Her hand jerked back, pulling the sleeve down. A clumsiness on my part, monsieur. I caught my wrist on the edge of my trunk while unpacking. It's nothing. Her smile was bright, but it did not reach her eyes. Poirot leaned forward, his voice soft but probing. Mademoiselle, you are an actress, accustomed to playing roles. But in matters of murder, the truth is the only script that matters. If you know anything about Madame van der Meer, or this Vincent who has not appeared, you must. Tell me. Her lips parted, then closed, and for a moment, Poirot thought she might confess. But she shook her head, her expression hardening. I've told you all I know, Monsieur Poirot. I'm as horrified as anyone by this crime. If you'll excuse me, I need some air. She rose, her movements graceful but hurried, and left the lounge car, her cigarette holder clutched like a talisman. Poirot watched her go, his mind cataloguing her reactions. The bruise, the evasion, the swift departure. She was hiding something, but what? He recalled the pearl earring found in Madame van der Meer's compartment, its luster foreign to the victim's jewelry. Could it be vows? Her sapphire ring was absent today, but pearls were not her style, so her wardrobe suggested. He resolved to examine her compartment later. With the conductor's permission, his thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of Lord Carlisle, who lumbered into the lounge car, his tweed suit rumpled and his face flushed with agitation. "Poirot," he barked, dropping into a chair without invitation. "This is a damned mess. Murder on the blue train. What's being done about it?" Poirot inclined his head, his expression serene. "All that can be done, monsieur. The authorities will be notified at Calais, but until then, Hercule Poirot investigates. Tell me, did you know Madame van der Meer well?" Carlisle snorted, waving a hand. "Met her once or twice at those tedious society affairs. Rich as Croesus, bit of a dragon, didn't care for her much, but murder, that's another thing entirely." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Heard a rumor, though, from a chap in London. Said she was mixed up in some shady business blackmail, if you can believe it. Not that I put stock in gossip." Poor eyes gleamed. "Blackmail, you say? And who might she have targeted?" Carlisle shrugged, his discomfort evident. "No names, just whispers. You know how these things are. People talk." He glanced toward the door, as if expecting eavesdropping. "Look, Poirot, I was in my compartment all night, save for a quick nip in the lounge car around 11. Ask Kessler, he was there, losing at cards." He chuckled, but it was forced, and Poirot noted the sweat beading on his brow. "Mercy, monsieur," Poirot said, dismissing him with a nod. Blackmail was a motive as old as time, and if Madame van der Meer had been wielding secrets as weapons, it explained her fear of a shadow. But whose secrets? Carlyle's mention of gossip was intriguing, especially given his unease. Poirot made a mental note to press him further later. He sought out Meer next, finding the conductor in the dining car, polishing silver with a fervor that suggested he was avoiding thought. "Monsieur Pierre," Poirot said, his tone gentle, but firm, "I require access to Mademoiselle Duval's compartment. Discreetly, you understand. And I must speak with the night porter, Jacques immediately." Pierre's lip twitched, but he nodded. "Jacques is in the staff car, monsieur. I'll fetch him. As for Mademoiselle Duval's compartment, I can arrange." it when she is in the lounge or dining car. But is it proper? Poirot's eyes narrowed. Proper, monsieur, is to find a murderer. You will assist me, oui? Pierre mumbled his assent and scurried off, leaving Poirot to ponder the bruise on Duval's wrist. A struggle, perhaps, or a mark of coercion, and the pearl earring, its presence in the locked compartment, suggested a connection to the crime. But whether as evidence or misdirection, he could not yet say. Shark, the night porter, was a wiry young man with a sallow complexion and eyes that darted like a cornered animal's. Monsieur Poirot, he said, his voice low, I swear I saw nothing unusual. I was in the staff car most of the night, except for a round at midnight. All was quiet. And the luggage car? Poirot asked, recalling the red scarf. Did you see anyone there? Jacques hesitated, his fingers twisting the hem of his uniform. I thought I heard a noise around 1A.M, a rustle, like someone moving. But when I looked, there was no one, just trunks and bags. Poirot's moustache twitched. A rustle, you say? And this was near the time I heard a cry. You were certain you saw no one? Jacques nodded vigorously, but his eyes betrayed fear. Poirot dismissed him, noting the porter's unease. Another thread, another secret. He returned to the lounge car, where Mademoiselle Duval had rejoined the others. Now seated with Kessler, their conversation low and tense. Poirot caught a snippet as he passed. Cannot know, Samuel, it's too dangerous. Duval's voice, sharp with urgency, cut off as she noticed Poirot. She smiled, but it was a mask, and Kessler's tic worsened. Poirot took a seat nearby, his notebook open but his attention on the pair. The actress's secret, he sensed, was a key to the puzzle. The bruise, the earring, the whispered words all pointed to a connection with Madame van der Meer. Perhaps one born in Paris at that charity gala. Blackmail, as Carlisle had suggested, was a plausible motive. But who was the victim and who? The predator. And where did Vincent, the phantom of compartment 16, fit in? As the train sped toward Calais, Poirot felt the net tightening. The locked compartment was a challenge, but not insurmountable. The clues, the glove, the scarf, the earring were breadcrumbs leading to the truth. Mademoiselle Duval, with her guarded eyes and hidden bruise, was a player in this deadly game, and Hercule Poirot would uncover her role before the journey's end. Chapter 6. The American's alibi. The blue train surged through the French countryside, its rhythm a steady counterpoint to the turmoil within its first-class carriage. The murder of Madame Elisabeth van der Meer had cast a shadow over the gleaming sapphire train, transforming its luxurious confines into a stage for suspicion and deceit. Hercule Poirot, seated in the lounge car, his polished shoes resting lightly on the plush carpet, observed the passengers with the keenness of a hawk. The clues he had gathered, the black glove with its LV monogram, the red scarf in the luggage car, the pearl earring, the smudged wineglass, and the faint scratch on the locked doorframe, formed a constellation of evidence, but the pattern remained elusive. His latest encounter with Mademoiselle Clara Duval had deepened his suspicions. Her guarded demeanor and the bruise on her wrist suggested a secret tied to the crime. Now, his attention turned to Mr. Samuel Kessler, the American whose nervous tic and monogrammed cufflinks marked him as a figure of interest. Kessler sat alone at the far end of the lounge car, his lean frame hunched over a glass of whiskey, though the hour was barely past breakfast. His charcoal suit, as impeccable as ever, contrasted with his disheveled air, his tie slightly askew, his eyes shadowed with fatigue. The LV wasp glinted as he lifted his glass, a detail that tugged at Poirot's mind like a loose thread. The monogram matched the glove found outside compartment 16. The elusive Vincent's domain, and Poirot distrusted coincidences. Kessler's claim of a quiet night, corroborated by Lord Carlisle's card game alibi, was plausible, but his restless demeanor and furtive glances suggested a man with something to hide. Poirot approached, his steps deliberate, his expression one of polite inquiry. "Monsieur Kessler," he began, bowing slightly, "may I join you? There are matters concerning the tragedy of Madame Vandermeer that we must discuss." Kessler's hand jerked, nearly spilling his whiskey, and his teeth twitch at the corner of his mouth flared briefly. "Of course, Mr. Poirot," he said, his American accent clipped with tension. "Though I don't know what I can tell you. I was as shocked as anyone to hear of her death." Poirot took the seat opposite, his hands folded neatly, his eyes fixed on Kessler's face. "Shock, monsieur, is a natural response to murder, yet I sense you are not entirely at ease. Tell me, where were you between midnight and 2 a.m. when Madame Vandermeer met her fate?" Kessler's fingers tightened round his glass, his knuckles whitening. "I told you, I was in my compartment. I played cards with Lord Carlisle in the lounge car until about 11, then turned in, slept through the night, didn't hear a thing." His voice was steady, but his eyes darted to the side. Avoiding Poirot's gaze, Poirot leaned forward, his tone gentle but probing. "And yet, monsieur, you seem troubled. Your hands, they tremble. Your eyes, they search the room. Is there something you wish to share with Hercule Poirot?" Kessler's tick flared again, and he set his glass down with a clink. "Look, I'm no saint, but I'm no murderer either. This whole thing's got me rattled, that's all. A woman strangled in her compartment. It's enough to make anyone jumpy." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Indeed, monsieur. But let us speak of another matter. Your cufflinks, they bear the initials LV, a curious detail, Nan, for they match the monogram on a glove I found outside compartment 16, the seat reserved for the absent Vincent. Can you explain this?" Kessler's face paled, his hand instinctively covering one cufflink. "These, they belonged to my brother, Leonard. He passed away last year. I wear them in his memory. Nothing more to it." His voice was tight, his tick now almost constant. Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "Leonard Vincent, you say, and this Vincent, who booked the last seat, is no relation. A remarkable coincidence, monsieur, for I have found that coincidences are often the footprints of truth." Kessler's jaw clenched, and he leaned back, his eyes narrowing. "I don't know any Vincent. Never met the man or woman, for all I know. My brother's dead, and I had nothing to do with that Dutch woman's murder." "You're barking up the wrong tree, Poirot." Poirot inclined his head, his smile polite but unyielding. "Perhaps, monsieur. But the tree, it has many branches, and I must examine them all. Tell me, did you know Madame Vandermeer before this journey?" Kessler shook his head, too quickly. "Never met her, saw her at dinner, that's all. She kept to herself, didn't she?" His fingers resumed their restless drumming on the table, and Poirot noted the faint sheen of sweat on his brow. "Mercy, Monsieur Kessler," Poirot said, rising. "We will speak again." As he turned away, he caught a glimpse of Kessler's hand slipping into his pocket, retrieving a small leather case. The movement was swift, almost furtive, and Poirot filed it away for later scrutiny. His next stop was the conductor, Pierre, whom he found in the dining car, overseeing the preparation for luncheon. Pierre's nervous demeanor had not abated. His lip twitched as Poirot approached. "Monsieur Pierre," Poirot said, his voice low, "I require your assistance. The service panel you mentioned, between the luggage car and the first-class carriage, show it to me, if you please." Pierre's eyes widened, but he nodded, leading Poirot through the corridor to the luggage car. The narrow space was as Poirot remembered: stacked trunks, the faint scent of leather and polish, and the red scarf still caught on a crate's edge, untouched since his last visit. Pierre pointed to a panel near the rear, barely visible behind. "A stack of valises here, monsieur," he said, his voice unsteady. "It's for maintenance wiring pipes. Only the staff use it." Poirot examined the panel, its edges flush with the wall but marked by a faint scuff, as if recently disturbed. He pressed gently, and it gave way, revealing a narrow passage just wide enough for a slender person to slip through. It led directly to the first-class carriage, emerging near compartment 16. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A clever design, Monsieur Pierre. And who among the staff knew of this passage?" Pierre swallowed, his hands twisting. "Myself, Jacques, the chief engineer. Perhaps the dining car staff, but they rarely come here. It's not meant for passengers." "Not meant, perhaps, but used," Poirot murmured. He thanked Pierre and dismissed him, his mind racing. The service panel explained how a murderer could enter a locked compartment, but it raised new questions. Who had the knowledge and the agility to exploit it? Kessler, with his lean frame, was a candidate, but so was the nimble Mademoiselle Duval, or even the wiry Jacques. Returning to the lounge car, Poirot overheard a snatch of conversation between Lord Carlisle and a waiter. "That Kessler fellow," Carlisle was saying, his voice low but carrying. "He was arguing with someone in the lounge car last night, before we played cards. Sounded heated. Couldn't see who it was, but I'd wager it was the Dutch woman." The waiter nodded, moving away, and Poirot's interest sharpened. An argument, unreported by Kessler, was a significant omission. He decided to confront Kessler again. But first, he sought out Lord Carlisle, who was now nursing a brandy in a corner of the lounge. "Monsieur Carlisle," Poirot said, approaching, "a word, if you please. You mentioned an argument last night involving Monsieur Kessler. Tell me more." Carlyle's eyes narrowed, his ruddy face tightening. "Eavesdropping, eh? Well, it's no secret. I was in the lounge car around 9, getting a drink. Kessler was there, talking to someone in a low voice, angry, like. I didn't catch much, just a few words about debts and promises. Thought it was none of my business, so I left them to it, and you did not see his companion." Poirot pressed. Carlisle shook his head. "Too dark in that corner. And I wasn't prying. Could have been anyone." He paused, then added, "Kessler's a jumpy sort, though. Noticed it at cards later. Kept checking his watch, like he was expecting trouble." Poirot nodded, his mind cataloguing the new information. An argument, possibly with Madame Vandermeer, suggested a motive debts perhaps, or a broken promise. The LV cufflinks linked Kessler to the glove, and his nervous demeanor pointed to guilt, or at least fear. Yet his alibi, supported by Carlisle, held for the critical hours. Was he a pawn in a larger scheme, or a cunning player hiding behind a facade of nerves? As the train neared Calais, Poirot felt the puzzle's edges sharpening. The service panel was a breakthrough, but it implicated the staff as much as the passengers. Kessler's secret, whatever it was was tied to his brother's initials, and perhaps to the phantom L. Vincent. The murderer had left clues: the glove, the scarf, the earring, but whether by accident or design, Poirot could not yet say. He returned to his compartment, his notebook open, and added, Kessler's argument, 9 p.m. debts, service panel access, LV connection deepens. The blue train's journey was nearing its end, but Poirot's pursuit of the truth was only beginning. Chapter 7. The Hidden Passage. The blue train hurtled through the French countryside, its sapphire carriages slicing through a landscape now bathed in the soft light of late morning. The murder of Madame Elisabeth van der Meer had transformed the train's luxurious interior into a labyrinth of suspicion, each passenger and crew member a potential player in a deadly game. Hercule Poirot, standing in the dim confines of the luggage car, felt the weight of the mystery pressing upon him. The discovery of the service panel, narrow passage connecting the luggage car to the first-class carriage, had opened a new avenue of inquiry. It explained how a murderer could bypass a locked door, but it raised fresh questions. Who knew of this hidden route, and who had the cunning to exploit it? The clues: the black glove with its LV monogram, the red scarf, the pearl earring, the smudged wineglass, and the scratched doorframe were pieces of a puzzle that Poirot's little grey cells were determined to assemble. He ran his fingers along the edge of the service panel, its scuffed surface betraying recent use. The passage was cramped, barely wide enough for a slender figure, but it led directly to the corridor near compartment 16, the elusive L. Vincent's reserved space. Poirot's mind churned. The panel was a secret known to the staff, but could a passenger have discovered it? The conductor, Meer, had named himself the night porter Jacques, and the chief engineer as those with knowledge of the passage. Yet Jacques' nervous admission of a rustling sound in the luggage car, coupled with Meer's evasive demeanor, suggested the staff might be more involved than they admitted. Poirot returned to the first-class carriage, his polished shoes silent on the carpeted floor. The corridor was empty. The passengers, either in their compartments or the dining car, where luncheon preparations were underway. The air was heavy with the scent of polished wood and the faint temps of fear news of the murder had spread, despite his efforts to contain it. He paused outside compartment 16, its door still closed, its occupant still absent. The glove with the LV monogram, found just here, was a tantalizing link to Mr. Samuel Kessler's cufflinks. Yet Kessler's alibi, corroborated by Lord Carlisle, held for the critical hours of midnight to 2 a.m. Was the glove a deliberate plant, or a careless mistake? He sought out Meer, finding him in the dining car, fussing over a tray of crystal glasses. The conductor's face was pale, his lip twitching as Poirot approached. Monsieur Pierre, Poirot said, his voice calm but unyielding, this service panelet is a most ingenious feature. Tell me, have you ever seen a passenger near the luggage car, perhaps acting with undue curiosity? Pierre's eyes darted to the side, his hands fumbling with a glass. No, monsieur, never. The luggage car is for staff only. Passengers have no reason to be there. His voice was too quick, his nervousness palpable. Poirot's mustache twitched. And yet, monsieur, I found a red scarf caught on a crate, and you yourself saw a cloaked figure there last night. This is no coincidence, I think. Who among the staff might have reason to conceal their movements? Pierre's face flushed, and he set the glass down with a clink. I swear, monsieur, I know nothing of this. Jacques was in the luggage car at midnight, doing his rounds, but he saw no one. The chief engineer, Monsieur Renaud, is in the engine room. He rarely leaves it. The waiters, they come and go, but they have no keys to the luggage car. Poirot nodded, his gaze fixed on Pierre's trembling hands. And you, monsieur, where were you at 1 a.m. when I heard a cry? Pierre swallowed, his lip twitching violently. I was in the staff car, monsieur, checking the roster. Jacques can confirm it. I heard nothing, saw nothing. But his eyes betrayed him, flickering toward the corridor, as if expecting pursuit. Well, Poirot said, dismissing him with a nod. But I will speak with Jacques again, and Monsieur Renaud's slow detail is too small, Monsieur Pierre. The conductor scurried away, leaving Poirot to ponder the man's fear. Was it guilt, or merely the strain of a murder on his watch? He decided to question Jacques next, tracking him down in the staff car, a cramped space filled with the scent of tobacco and coffee. The night porter was polishing boots, his sallow face drawn, his eyes darting as Poirot entered. Monsieur, Jacques Poirot began, his tone gentle but probing. You told me of a rustling sound in the luggage car around 1 a.m. Tell me more. Did you see this cloaked figure that Pierre mentioned? Jacques' hands stilled, the polishing cloth dropping to his lap. I didn't see anyone, monsieur. Just heard the noise, like fabric or footsteps. I looked, but the car was empty. I swear it. His voice cracked, and Poirot noted the beads of sweat on his forehead. And this service panel, Poirot pressed. You knew of it. Oui. Have you ever seen it used, perhaps by someone who should not? Jacques shook his head. Vehemently, no, monsieur. It's for maintenance, not for sneaking about. I've never seen anyone near it, not passengers, not staff. But his eyes avoided Poirot's, and his fingers resumed their nervous twisting. Poirot thanked him and withdrew, his mind cataloguing the porter's fear. Jacques was hiding something, but whether it was complicity or mere cowardice, he could not yet say. The service panel was a critical discovery, but it implicated the staff as much as the passengers. He needed more something to connect the panel to the crime scene, to the glove, to the earring. Returning to the lounge car, he found Mademoiselle Clara Duval and Lord Carlisle in conversation, their voices low but heated. Duval's face was flushed, her emerald eyes flashing, while Carlisle's ruddy cheeks were set in a scowl. You're making too much of it, Clara, Carlisle was saying, his voice barely above a whisper. No one saw anything. Keep your head. Duval's lips tightened, and she glanced up, spotting Poirot. Her expression shifted to one of studied calm, but her hands betrayed her, clenching the armrest. Monsieur Poirot, she said, her voice smooth, have you made progress in your inquiries? Poirot inclined his head, taking a seat nearby. Progress, mademoiselle, is a matter of patience. But tell me, have either of you heard of this service panel in the luggage car? A curious feature, Nan Carlisle snorted, his brandy glass pausing mid-sip. Service panel. Sounds like train nonsense to me. Never heard of it. You think the murderer used it to sneak about? Duval's eyes narrowed, but she shook her head. I know nothing of such things, monsieur. I'm a passenger, not a mechanic. Her tone was light, but Poirot caught the edge in it. The way her fingers tightened further. He changed tack, addressing Carlisle. Monsieur, you mentioned an argument involving Monsieur Kessler last night. You spoke of debts and promises. Could it have been with Madame van der Meer? Carlisle's face darkened, and he set his glass down with a thud. I told you I couldn't see who it was. Might have been her, might have been anyone. Kessler's a nervous sort, probably arguing over a bad deal. Why don't you ask him? Poirot's smile was serene but unyielding. I shall, monsieur. But first I ask you, did you know Madame Vandermeer, beyond those tedious society affairs? Perhaps a matter of business, or something more personal. Carlyle's eyes widened, then narrowed. What are you implying, Poirot? I barely knew the woman. She was a cold fish, always poking into other people's affairs. If she got herself killed, maybe she poked too far. He rose, his movements abrupt, and stormed out, leaving Duval alone. Poirot turned to her, his voice soft. And you, mademoiselle, did Madame Vandermeer poke into your affairs? Duval's smile was brittle. You're persistent, monsieur. I told you, I barely knew her. If she had enemies, I wasn't one of them. She rose, her movements graceful but hurried, and followed Carlyle out. Poirot leaned back, his notebook open, and added, service panel known to staff. Jacques' fear, Carlyle's anger, Duval's evasion, Kessler's argument debts. The hidden passage was a breakthrough, but it widened the circle of suspects. The staff peer Jacques, perhaps Renaud had access, but so might a clever passenger. The gloves, LV, pointed to Kessler, yet his alibi held. The earrings suggested Duval, but her denial was firm. The red scarf remained an enigma, its owner unknown. As the train neared Calais, Poirot felt the puzzle's complexity deepen. The hidden passage was the key to the locked compartment, but who had used it? The shadow Madame Vandermeer feared was close, its presence felt in every nervous glance, every evasive word. Hercule Poirot, with his unerring instinct for truth, would follow the passage to its end, no matter who it implicated. Chapter 8. The earring's owner, the blue train sped through the French countryside, its sapphire carriages glinting under a midday sun that cast long shadows across the rolling fields. Within the first-class carriage, the air was taut with suspicion. The murder of Madame Elisabeth Vandermeer, a silent accusation hanging over every passenger and crew member. Hercule Poirot, seated in his compartment, his notebook open before him, felt the weight of the mystery intensify. The clues he had gathered, the black glove with its LV monogram, the red scarf in the luggage car, the pearl earring in the victim's locked compartment, the smudged wine glass, the scratched doorframe, and the hidden service panel formed a complex web, each thread leading to new questions. The service panel had revealed a means to bypass the locked door, but the identity of the murderer remained elusive. Now, Poirot's focus turned to the pearl earring, a delicate object that seemed to whisper of another's presence in the deadly scene. The earring, small and lustrous, was an anomaly. Madame Vandermeer's jewelry case, meticulously examined by Poirot, contained no pearls, only diamonds, sapphires, and an emerald brooch. The earring, found on the carpet near the bed, belonged to someone else. Its placement either a careless mistake or a deliberate taunt. Poirot's little grey cells churned, recalling Mademoiselle Clara Duval's guarded demeanour, the bruise on her wrist, and her swift denial of any close connection to the victim. Her elegance and theatrical poise made her a likely candidate for such a refined accessory, yet her style, marked by sapphires and silks, seemed at odds with the simplicity of a single pearl. Still, the bruise and her evasive answers suggested a secret, and Poirot resolved to confront her with the evidence. He found her in the dining car, where luncheon was being served, the clink of crystal and silver a stark contrast to the grim mood. Duval sat alone, her cream blouse replaced by a soft lavender dress that clung to her slender frame. She was sipping coffee, her eyes fixed on a point beyond the window. though Poirot sensed she was acutely aware of her. He approached, his manner courteous but unyielding, and took the seat opposite her without invitation. "Mademoiselle Duval," he began, his voice low and measured, "we must speak again. The matter of Madame Vandermeer's death grows more complex, and I believe you can shed light on a certain detail." Her emerald eyes met his, a flicker of wariness passing through them before she summoned a smile. "Monsieur Poirot, you are tireless. I've told you all I know, sadly, very little. What detail do you mean?" Poirot reached into his pocket, producing the pearl earring, which he placed on the table between them, its luster catching the light. "This, mademoiselle, it was found in Madame Vandermeer's compartment, near her body. It does not belong to her. Is it, perhaps, yours?" Duval's hand froze mid-sip, her coffee cup hovering before her lips. For a moment, her composure wavered, her eyes locked on the earring. Then she set the cup down, her movements deliberate, and leaned back, her smile tight. "A pearl earring. It's lovely, but not mine, monsieur. I prefer sapphires, as you may have noticed." She gestured to the ring on her finger, its blue stone glinting. Poirot's mustache twitched. "Indeed, mademoiselle, I have noticed. Yet this earring was found in a locked compartment, where only the victim and her murderer could have been. You told me you retired to your compartment at 10, heard nothing, saw nothing. But I wonder, did you perhaps visit Madame Vandermeer earlier in the evening? A brief conversation, perhaps, that left this behind?" Her face paled, and she clasped her hands tightly in her lap, the bruise on her wrist once again partially visible. "You're mistaken, monsieur. I never entered her compartment. I barely knew her. If that earring was there, someone else must have left it." Her voice was steady, but Poirot caught the slight tremor, the way her eyes darted to the side. He leaned forward, his tone gentle but relentless. "Mademoiselle, you are a woman of the stage, accustomed to masks, but in murder, the mask must fall. I ask you again, did you see Madame Vandermeer last night, and does this earring belong to you?" Duval's lips parted, and for a moment, Poirot thought she might break. Then her expression hardened, and she rose, her chair scraping softly against the floor. "I've nothing more to say, Monsieur Poirot. If you think I'm involved, prove it. But you're chasing shadows." She turned and left, her lavender dress a fleeting blur as she exited the dining car. Poirot remained, the earring still on the table, its presence a silent challenge. Her denial was firm, but her reaction fear, masquerading as defiance, confirmed. His suspicion, she was hiding something, and the earring was a key. He pocketed it, resolving to search her compartment when the opportunity arose, though he would need Pierre's cooperation to do so discreetly. His thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of Lord Edward Carlisle, who lumbered into the dining car, his face flushed from more than just the morning's warmth. He spotted Poirot and approached, his tweed suit rumpled, his eyes bloodshot. "Poirot, this is getting out of hand," he growled, dropping into a chair. "Everyone's whispering about murder. You've got to put a stop to this nonsense before we reach Calais." Poirot inclined his head, his expression serene. "Nonsense, monsieur. A woman is dead, strangled in a locked compartment. This is no rumor, but a fact, and facts, they lead to truth. Tell me, did you notice Mademoiselle Duval wearing pearl earrings last night?" Carlisle blinked, caught off guard. "Pearls, no. Can't say I did. She had that sapphire ring, though flashy thing. Why? You think she's mixed up in this?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "I think only what the evidence suggests, monsieur. You mentioned an argument involving Monsieur Kessler last night, about debts and promises. Could Mademoiselle Duval have been his opponent?" Carlisle's brow furrowed, and he rubbed his chin. "Didn't see her face, I told you. It was dark, and I wasn't close. But it was a woman's voice, sharp, like she was laying into him. Could have been Duval, I suppose, or even the Dutch woman herself." He paused, then added, "She was a meddler, Meer, always asking questions, digging into people's business. If she was blackmailing someone, they might have had enough." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Blackmail, you say again? A serious accusation, monsieur. Did she ever meddle in your affairs?" Carlyle's face reddened, and he slammed his fist on the table, rattling the silverware. "Now see here, Poirot. I'm no saint, but I'm no murderer either. I barely knew her, and I was in my compartment all night, save for that card game with Kessler. Ask him." He rose, his chair scraping loudly, and stormed out. Leaving a trail of muttered curses, Poirot made a mental note of Carlyle's temper, his quick deflection. The man was hiding something, but whether it was guilt or mere embarrassment, he could not yet say. The mention of blackmail, repeated now by Carlyle, was a thread worth pursuing. If Madame Meer had been leveraging secrets, it explained her fear and her murder. But whose secrets? Duval's, Kessler's, Carlyle's, or someone else? Entirely. He sought out Pierre, who was hovering near the dining car's entrance, his nervous tick more pronounced than ever. "Monsieur Pierre," Poirot said, his voice calm but firm, "I must examine Mademoiselle Duval's compartment, arrange it for when she is occupied, and ensure no one sees us." Pierre's lip twitched, but he nodded. "She's in the lounge." "Car now, monsieur. I can take you, but we must be quick." He led Poirot to compartment 11, unlocking it with his master key. The space was tidy, its surfaces adorned with a few personal touches: a silver hairbrush, a bottle of perfume, a velvet jewelry case. Poirot opened the case, finding the sapphire ring and a pair of matching earrings, but no pearls. A search of the drawers revealed silk scarves, gloves, and a small diary, its pages filled with appointments and cryptic notes, but nothing overtly incriminating. Yet as he lifted a folded shawl, he found a single pearl earring, identical to the one from the crime scene, tucked into a corner. Poirot's mustache twitched. "Voilà," he murmured, pocketing the earring. It was not proof of murder, but it placed Duval in Madame Meer's compartment, contradicting her story. He thanked Pierre and returned to the lounge car, where Duval was now seated with Kessler, their heads bent close in conversation. Poirot caught a fragment. "Mustn't know, Clara. It's too risky." Kessler's voice, low and urgent, cut off as he noticed Poirot. The detective took a seat nearby, his notebook open, and added, "Second pearl earring in Duval's compartment. She was in 14. Blackmail motive." The earring's owner was no longer a mystery, but the why and how remained. Duval's secret, tied to her presence in the victim's compartment, was a piece of the puzzle, but the shadow of Vincent and the hidden passage loomed larger. As the train neared Calais, Poirot felt the net tightening, and he would not rest until the murderer was caught. Chapter 9. The Wineglass. The blue train pressed onward through the French countryside, its sapphire carriages cutting a relentless path toward Calais under a sky now heavy with gathering clouds. The murder of Madame Elisabeth Meer had transformed the train's opulent interior into a crucible of suspicion. each passenger and crew member a potential suspect in a drama of deceit and death. Hercule Poirot, seated in the lounge car, his notebook open but his eyes scanning the room, felt the puzzle's complexity deepen. The clues: the black glove with its LVE monogram, the red scarf in the luggage car, the pair of pearl earrings, linking Mademoiselle Clara Duval to the crime scene, the scratched doorframe, the hidden service panel, and the smudged wine glass formed a tapestry of evidence, yet the threads refused to weave into a coherent whole. The wine glass, half empty, and bearing a trace of lip rouge, now drew Poirot's focus. It was a subtle detail, but in his experience, such subtleties often held the key to truth. The lounge car was quieter now, the passengers subdued by the weight of the murder. Mademoiselle Duval sat alone, her lavender dress a soft contrast to her tense posture, her fingers tracing the rim of a coffee cup. Mr. Samuel Kessler, his nervous tic more pronounced, lingered at the bar, his whiskey untouched. Lord Edward Carlisle, his ruddy face set in a scowl, occupied a corner, muttering to himself over a newspaper. The absence of Madame Vandermeer's commanding presence left a void, and the empty table reserved for the elusive Vincent was a silent reminder of the mystery's heart. Poirot's little grey cells churned, piecing together the fragments: Duval's confirmed presence in the victim's compartment, Kessler's monogrammed cufflinks, an unreported argument, Carlyle's hints of blackmail, and the hidden passage, known to the staff. The wine glass, however, offered a new angular possible method to the murder's execution. Poirot rose, his movements deliberate, and approached the conductor Meer, who was hovering near the dining car entrance, his lip twitching as he polished a silver tray. "Monsieur Pierre," Poirot said, his voice calm but firm, "I require the wine glass from Madame Vandermeer's compartment. It must be examined by Dr. Lefebvre for traces of anything unusual. And tell me, who served the wine in the dining car last night?" Pierre's hands faltered, the tray tilting slightly. "The wine glass, monsieur. It's still in the compartment, sealed as you ordered. I will fetch Dr. Lefebvre. As for the wine, it was served by Antoine, the head waiter. The bottle was a Bordeaux from the dining car's stock, available to all passengers." His eyes darted to the side, betraying his unease. Poirot nodded, his mustache twitching. "Very well. Bring the glass to Dr. Lefebvre and summon Antoine. I will speak with him." Pierre hurried away, his nervous gait betraying a man under strain. Poirot returned to his seat, his mind turning to the wine glass. The smudge of lip rouge, absent from Madame Vandermeer's pale lips, suggested another's presence, or a deliberate attempt to mislead. The glass's contents, if tampered with, could explain the victim's lack of struggle. Despite the brutal act of strangulation, Dr. Lefebvre arrived promptly, his dour face set in a frown as he carried the wine glass, carefully wrapped in a cloth. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his French accent clipped, "you suspect poison, perhaps? I examined the body, no signs of it, only the strangulation. But I can test the wine for sedatives or toxins. It will take time." Poirot inclined his head. "Time, Monsieur le Docteur, is a luxury we do not have. The train nears Calais, and the murderer is among us. Test the wine and report to me at once." Lefebvre nodded and withdrew, the glass cradled like a relic. Antoine, the head waiter, was a tall man with a hawkish nose and a demeanor polished to a fault. He approached Poirot with a bow, his uniform pristine. "Monsieur, you wished to see me?" "Oui, Monsieur Antoine," Poirot said, his eyes sharp. The wine served in the dining car last night at Bordeaux, I am told. Who requested it, and who handled the bottle? Antoine's expression remained impassive, but his fingers adjusted his cuff with a touch of nervousness. The Bordeaux was popular last night, monsieur. Lord Carlisle ordered a glass, as did Mademoiselle Duval. Monsieur Kessler preferred whiskey. But I recall Madame Vandermeer taking a bottle to her compartment after dinner. I poured it myself, from the stock in the dining car. It was sealed, untouched, before I opened it. Poirot's eyes gleamed. A bottle, you say, and you are certain it was sealed? Antoine nodded, though his eyes flickered. Oui, monsieur. I always check. The bottle was delivered to her compartment by Jacques, the night porter, at her request. Poirot made a mental note. Jacques again, linked to the luggage car, and now the wine. And did you notice anything unusual about Madame Vandermeer? Her mood, perhaps, or her interactions? Antoine hesitated, then said, she seemed preoccupied, monsieur. She spoke little, but I overheard her say something to Mademoiselle Duval at dinner. Something about debts repaid. It was brief, and I thought nothing of it at the time. Debts repaid, Poirot echoed, his mind racing. The phrase echoed Carlyle's mention of Kessler's argument, suggesting a web of financial or personal entanglements. He thanked Antoine and dismissed him, his thoughts returning to the wine. Glass, a sedative, if present, would explain the ease of the murderer victim drowsy, unable to resist the cord. But who had access to the bottle, and who applied the lip rouge? He approached Mademoiselle Duval, who was now reading a novel, though her eyes barely moved across the page. Mademoiselle, he said, his tone gentle but probing, a question. You ordered wine last night, a Bordeaux, oui. Did you share it with Madame Vandermeer, perhaps in her compartment? Duval's eyes snapped up, her composure faltering. I told you, Monsieur Poirot, I never entered her compartment. Yes, I had wine at dinner, but I drank it in the dining car. I don't know how that glass got there, or whose lip rouge it bears. Her voice was sharp, and Poirot noted the faint flush on her cheeks. And yet, he said, producing the second pearl earring from his pocket, this was found in your compartment. Identical to the one in Madame Vandermeer's. You were there, mademoiselle. Why? Her lips parted, and for a moment she seemed on the verge of confession. Then her expression hardened. You're mistaken, monsieur. That earring could belong to anyone. I've nothing more to say. She rose, her movements abrupt, and left the lounge car, her novel forgotten on the table. Poirot picked up the book, noting its titular French romance, its pages well worn. A slip of paper marked a page bearing a handwritten note. Paris, June, E.V. knows. Be careful. The initials matched Madame Vandermeer's, and Poirot's pulse quickened. Duval's secret was tied to the victim, perhaps through the Paris gala. She had mentioned blackmail, as Carlisle suggested, seemed increasingly likely. He sought out Dr. Lefebvre, who was in the staff car, examining the wine under a portable microscope. Monsieur Poirot, he said, his face grim, the wine contains a sedative chloral hydrate, in a dose sufficient to induce drowsiness, not death. It would have made her compliant, easy to overpower. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Merci, docteur. This is most illuminating. The sedative confirmed his suspicion. The murder was planned, the victim drugged to ensure silence. The lip rouge, however, remained a puzzle. Duval denied wearing it, and Madame Vandermeer's lips were bare. Was it a third party, or a clever ruse? He returned to the lounge car, where Kessler and Carlisle were now seated together, their conversation low and tense. Poirot caught a snippet. "Can't let it get out, Edward. Too much at stake." Kessler's voice, urgent, cut off as he noticed Poirot. The detective made a mental note. Another secret shared between the men. His notebook open, Poirot added, "Wine drugged with chloral hydrate. Duval's no TV knows. Kessler and Carlisle conspire." The wineglass had revealed a method, but the murderer's identity remained elusive. As the train neared Calais, Poirot felt the net tightening, the clues converging toward a truth he would soon uncover. Chapter 10. The monograms, meaning the blue train barreled through the French countryside, its sapphire carriages gleaming under a sky, now heavy with the threat of rain. The murder of Madame Elisabeth van der Meer had cast a pall over the journey, transforming the luxurious train into a crucible where secrets simmered and suspicions festered. Hercule Poirot, seated in the lounge car, his notebook open before him, felt the puzzle's pieces shifting into sharper focus. The clues: a black glove with its LV monogram, the red scarf in the luggage car, the pearl earrings tying Mademoiselle Clara Duval to the crime scene, the drugged wine glass, the scratched door frame, the hidden service panel, and the cryptic note in Duval's novel formed a complex mosaic. Yet the monogram LV, found on both the glove and Mr. Samuel Kessler's cufflinks, tugged at Poirot's mind like a persistent melody. It was a thread that promised to unravel the mystery of the elusive Vincent, the phantom passenger of compartment 16. Kessler sat alone at the bar, his lean frame hunched over a fresh whiskey, though he barely sipped it. His nervous tika twitch at the corner of his mouth was more pronounced, his eyes darting to the door with every new arrival. The LV cufflinks, glinting in the chandelier's light, were a silent accusation, linking him to the glove found outside compartment 16. Poirot's little grey cells churned, recalling Kessler's claim that the cufflinks belonged to his late brother, Leonard Vincent, and his denial of any connection to the mysterious Vincent. The coincidence was too neat, and Poirot distrusted neatness in matters of murder. He approached his polished shoes silent on the plush carpet, and took the seat beside Kessler without invitation. "Monsieur Kessler," he began, his voice calm but unyielding, "we must speak again. The monogram LV on your cufflinks is a curious detail, Nan, for it matches the glove found outside compartment 16, reserved for one Vincent. You say this is your brother's initial, yet I wonder if there is more to tell." Kessler's hand jerked, the whiskey sloshing in his glass. His tic flared, and he set the glass down with a clink. "I told you, Poirot, they're Leonard's. My brother's been dead a year heart attack, nothing sinister. I wear them to honor him. This Vincent business is pure chance. I don't know the man or woman." His voice was sharp, but his eyes avoided Poirot's, fixed instead on the bar's polished surface. Poirot leaned forward, his hands folded neatly. "Chance, monsieur, is a word I use sparingly. Let us speak plainly. You were overheard arguing last night, before your card game with Lord Carlisle, about debts and promises. Was this with Madame van der Meer, and does it relate to your brother, perhaps?" Kessler's face paled, his tic now a constant twitch. "You're fishing, Poirot. I didn't argue with anyone. Carlisle's got it wrong, too much brandy, probably. I was in the lounge car, sure, but just drinking, minding my own business. Then I played cards and went to bed. That's it." His fingers drummed a restless rhythm, and Poirot noted the leather case in his pocket, glimpsed earlier, now slightly protruding. Very well, Poirot said, his tone gentle but probing. But tell me, monsieur, what is in that case you guard so closely? A memento, perhaps, or something more revealing? Kessler's hand flew to his pocket, covering the case. It's personal, he snapped. Letters from my brother. That's all. Nothing to do with your murder. He rose, his movements abrupt, and strode toward the corridor, leaving his whiskey untouched. Poirot watched him go, his mustache twitching. Kessler's denial was vehement, but his fear was palpable. The case, the argument, the monogram, these were not mere coincidences, but clues to a deeper truth. He resolved to search Kessler's compartment, with Pierre's reluctant assistance. To uncover the contents of that case, he found Pierre in the dining car, arranging napkins with a fervor that suggested avoidance. Monsieur Pierre said, his voice low, I require access to Monsieur Kessler's compartment, discreetly, as before. He is in the lounge car. Now make it quick. Pierre's lip twitched, his eyes darting. Monsieur, this is highly irregular. If he finds out, he will not. Poirot interrupted, his tone firm. A murderer walks this train, and I will find him. Open the door. Pierre nodded, his hands trembling, and led Poirot to compartment 13. The space was tidy, almost austere, with a single valise and a coat hung neatly on a hook. Poirot searched swiftly, his gloved hands methodical. In a drawer, he found the leather case's small, worn portfolio containing letters, as Kessler had claimed. He scanned them quickly. Correspondence from Leonard Vincent, dated a year prior. Addressed to Kessler. One letter caught his eye, its tone urgent. Samuel, she knows about the deal. Evie is dangerous, pay her, or we're ruined. The initials matched Madame van der Meer's, and Poirot's pulse quickened. The letter hinted at a financial scheme, perhaps the blackmail Carlisle had mentioned. Had Leonard's death freed Kessler from this threat, or had Madame van der Meer continued to press? He replaced the case, noting a second item, small vial, half empty, tucked into a hidden pocket of the valise. Its label was faded, but the word chloral was legible. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Chloral hydrate, the sedative, found in the victim's wine. Kessler's alibi held, but this vial placed him closer to the crime's method. He pocketed it, intending to show Dr. Lefebvre, and left the compartment, ensuring no trace of his presence remained. Returning to the lounge car, he found Lord Carlisle and Mademoiselle Duval in conversation, their voices low but tense. You're too careless, Edward, Duval was saying, her emerald eyes flashing. If he finds out, she stopped as Poirot approached, her expression shifting to one of polite indifference. Monsieur Carlisle, Mademoiselle Poirot said, bowing slightly, a question. Did either of you see Monsieur Kessler with a vial, perhaps, of medicine last night? Carlyle's brow furrowed, his ruddy face darkening. Medicine? No, nothing like that. He was drinking whiskey, not popping pills. Why? Duval's eyes narrowed, but she shook her head. I saw no vial, monsieur. Kessler kept to himself, as always. Her voice was smooth, but Poirot noted the way her hand clenched her coffee cup. He nodded, his smile enigmatic. Mercy, every detail matters, you understand. He withdrew, his mind racing. The vial linked Kessler to the sedative, but his alibi, supported by Carlisle, was unshaken. Was he working with another, or was the vial another misdirection, like the pearl earring? He sought out Dr. Lefebvre, who was in the staff car, reviewing notes. Monsieur le Docteur, Poirot said, producing the vial. This was found in Monsieur Kessler's possession. Is it the same chloral hydrate as in the Wine. Lefebvre examined it, his dour face tightening. It appears so, monsieur. The concentration matches, but many carry such sedatives for sleep, hardly proof of murder. Poirot inclined his head. Proof, no, but a piece of the puzzle. He thanked Lefebvre and returned to his notebook, adding, vial of chloral hydrate in Kessler's compartment. Letter from L.V. Rye, Evie's knowledge. Blackmail confirmed. The monogram's meaning was clearer. Now Leonard, Vincent, Kessler's brother, tied to Madame van der Meer through a dangerous secret. But was Kessler the murderer, or a pawn in a larger scheme? As the train neared Calais, the clouds outside darkened, mirroring the storm within. The L.V. monogram had led Poirot to a motive blackmail over a financial deal, but the murderer's hand remained hidden. The shadow Madame van der Meer feared was close, and Hercule Poirot would follow the monogram to its truth, no matter the cost. Chapter 11. The twist of the knife. The blue train thundered toward Calais, its sapphire carriages slicing through a landscape now shrouded in the grey veil of an impending storm. The murder of Madame Elisabeth van der Meer had transformed the journey into a chessboard of deception, each passenger and crew member a potential piece in a deadly game. Hercule Poirot, standing in the corridor of the first-class carriage, felt the puzzle's threads converging. The Cloister black glove, with its L.V. monogram, the red scarf in the luggage car, the pearl earrings linking Mademoiselle Clara Duval to the crime scene, the drugged wine glass, the scratched door frame, the hidden service panel, the cryptic note in Duval's novel, and the vial of chloral hydrate in Mr. Samuel Kessler's possession had painted a picture of motive and method. But the murderer's identity remained a shadow. Now, as the train neared its destination, Poirot sensed the moment for revelation was at hand. The lounge car was a crucible of tension. The passengers gathered in uneasy clusters. Mademoiselle Duval sat alone, her lavender dress a soft contrast to her rigid posture, her eyes darting to the door with every creak of the train. Mr. Kessler, his nervous tic more pronounced, nursed a whiskey at the bar, his L.V. cufflinks glinting accusingly. Lord Edward Carlisle, his ruddy face set in a scowl, paced near a window, muttering about delays and scandal. The conductor, Pierre, hovered at the edge of the room, his lip twitching as he adjusted a curtain with unnecessary fervor. The absence of Madame van der Meer and the still empty seat of L. Vincent cast a pall over the scene, a reminder of the crime that bound them all. Poirot entered, his polished shoes silent on the plush carpet, his Homburg hat held in one hand. He surveyed the room, his little grey cells alight with the weight of his discoveries. The time had come to confront the passengers, to weave the clues into a net that would ensnare the guilty. He cleared his throat, his voice calm but commanding, cutting through the murmurs like a blade, Mies Amos. He began, his eyes sweeping the room. A tragedy has occurred on this train, a murder most foul. Madame Elisabeth van der Meer lies dead, strangled in her locked compartment, and the murderer is among us. But Hercule Poirot does not rest until the truth is revealed. I have gathered the pieces of this puzzle, and now I will lay them before you. The passengers turned, their faces a mix of shock, fear, and defiance. Duval's hand tightened on her coffee cup, Kessler's tic flared, and Carlyle stopped pacing, his eyes narrowing. Pierre's lip twitched violently, and he took a step back, as if to flee. Poirot raised a hand, his presence commanding silence. Let us begin with the facts. Madame van der Meer was strangled between midnight and 2 a.m. her compartment locked, the window bolted. A wineglass, drugged with chloral hydrate, ensured her compliance. A pearl earring, not hers, was found on the carpet, and a scratch on the doorframe suggested tampering. A black glove, monogrammed LV, was found outside compartment 16, reserved for the absent Vincent. A red scarf in the luggage car, a hidden service panel, and a note in Mademoiselle Duval's novel, all point to a web of secrets. And now I will unravel them. He turned to Duval, his gaze steady. Mademoiselle, you were in Madame Vandermeer's compartment. The pearl earring, identical to one found in your possession, proves it. You denied it, but the evidence does not lie. Why were you there? Duval's face paled, her emerald eyes wide. I went to speak with her, yes, after dinner. She invited me. We talked of Paris, of the gala where we met, but I left before 10. I swear I didn't harm her. Her voice cracked, and Poirot noted the tremor in her hands, the bruise on her wrist now fully visible. He nodded, turning to Kessler. Monsieur Kessler, your cufflinks bear the monogram LV, matching the glove. A letter from your late brother, Leonard Vincent, found in your compartment, speaks of a deal and Madame Vandermeer's knowledge. A vial of chloral hydrate, identical to that in the wine, was also yours. You argued with someone last night about debts and promises. Was it her? Kessler's tic erupted, his hand clutching his glass. I told you, Poirot, I didn't kill her. Yes, I argued with Clara, not Madame Vandermeer. It was about a loan, nothing more. The vial was for my nerves, prescribed by a doctor. My brother's letter. It's old business, settled when he died. His voice was desperate, his eyes pleading. Poirot turned to Carlisle. Monsieur, you spoke of blackmail, of Madame Vandermeer's meddling. You played cards with Monsieur Kessler, but you saw him argue earlier, and you, too, have secrets, Nan. What did she know about you? Carlisle's face reddened, his fists clenching. Damn your insinuations, Poirot. I didn't touch her. Yes. She asked about my investments, my land deals in Africa. But I was in my compartment, asleep, after cards. Ask Kessler. His voice boomed, but Poirot saw fear in his eyes. Poirot paused, then turned to Meer, who shrank under his gaze. And you, Monsieur Meer, you knew of the service panel, the perfect path to a locked compartment. You saw a cloaked figure in the luggage car, heard a cry, yet you did nothing. Why? Meer's lip twitched violently, his hands twisting. I was afraid, monsieur. I thought it was nothing, a passenger lost. I swear I didn't. Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. Enough. The truth, mes amis, is this. Madame Vandermeer was a blackmailer. She knew of Mademoiselle Duval's affair with her late husband in Paris, a scandal that could ruin her career. She knew of Monsieur Kessler's brother's embezzlement, a debt unpaid. She knew of Monsieur Carlisle's shady land deals, a fortune at risk. Each of you had reason to wish her dead. But the method, the locked door, the sedative, the service panel points to another. He paused, his eyes narrowing. The glove, the LV monogram, was a misdirection. Monsieur Kessler's alibi holds, as does Monsieur Carlisle's. Mademoiselle Duval was in the compartment, but not at the time of death. The true murderer used the service panel, drugged the wine, and left the earring to implicate another. That murderer is you, Poirot, should I say, Lucien Vassar. Meer's face drained of colour, his body trembling. No, monsieur, you're wrong, Poirot continued, relentless. You are Lucien Vassar, dismissed by the Vandermeer family for theft years ago. You took the name Peer, joined the train's staff, and booked the last seat as L. Vincent to stalk your former employer. The glove was yours, dropped in haste. You used the service panel to enter her compartment, drugged her wine, and strangled her in revenge for your ruin. The earring, stolen from Mademoiselle Duval's case, was your attempt to shift blame. Pierre Lucien staggered back, his eyes wild. You can't prove it. You have no evidence. Poirot's smile was cold. The red scarf in the luggage. Car, mon ami, bears your initials LV, embroidered faintly. I found it this morning, hidden in your locker. The police in Calais will find more, I think. Lucien's resolve broke, and he sank to his knees, sobbing. She ruined me, took everything, my name, my future. I had to stop her. The passengers stared, stunned, as Poirot signalled the staff to restrain him. The shadow Madame Vandermeer feared had been unveiled, its motive rooted in a past of betrayal. As the train neared Calais, Poirot's little grey cells rested, the puzzle solved, but the weight of human vengeance lingered. Chapter 12. The confession. The blue train hurtled toward Calais, its sapphire carriages cutting through a landscape now cloaked in the first shadows of a stormy dusk. The revelation in the lounge car had left a stunned silence, the air heavy with the weight of truth unveiled. Lucien Vassar, unmasked as the murderer of Madame Elisabeth Vandermeer, knelt on the plush carpet, his sobs echoing in the opulent space. Hercule Poirot stood before him, his diminutive figure commanding, his eyes sharp with the clarity of justice. The passengers, Mademoiselle Clara Duval, Mr. Samuel Kessler, and Lord Edward Carlisle, watched in a mixture of shock, relief, and unease, their secrets exposed, but their guilt absolved. The conductor's assistant, Jacques, and the head waiter, Antoine, restrained Lucien, their faces pale as they grappled with the betrayal of one of their own. Poirot's voice, calm but unyielding, cut through the tension. Monsieur Vassar, you have confessed to the crime, but Hercule Poirot requires the full truth. Tell us, in your own words, how you committed this murder, and why. The police in Calais await, but here, among those you sought to deceive, you will speak. Lucien's head bowed, his shoulders shaking, but he lifted his eyes, wild with a mix of defiance and despair. You've got it all, Poirot, he rasped, his French accent thick with emotion. I was Lucien Vassar, once a trusted servant in the Vandermeer household. Madame accused me of stealing a diamond brooch, had me dismissed, disgraced. It was a lie. I took nothing, but she ruined me, left me with no name, no future. I swore I'd make her pay. He paused, his breath ragged, and Poirot gestured for him to continue, his moustache twitching slightly. Lucien's gaze darted to the passengers, lingering on Duval's pale face, Kessler's trembling hands, and Carlisle's scowl. I changed my name to Peer, worked my way onto the blue train staff. When I learned she'd be on this journey, I saw my chance. I booked the last seat, compartment 16, as L. Vincent, my old initials, a name to hide behind. I never meant to use it, just to watch her, to wait. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And the service panel, monsieur. You knew of it, oui. Lucien nodded, his voice low. Yes, I'd seen it used for maintenance, knew it led to the first-class carriage. I planned everything. I stole a pearl earring from Mademoiselle Duval's case during a routine check. She left her door ajar one evening. I wanted to throw suspicion on her. knowing she'd crossed Madame in Paris. I got the chloral hydrate from a chemist in London. Easy enough for a sleepless man to claim. The wine I tampered with the bottle before Antoine poured it, knowing Madame always took one to her compartment. Duval gasped, her hand flying to her throat, but Poirot silenced her with a glance. "Continue, monsieur," he said to Lucien. Voice grew steadier, as if unburdening himself gave him strength. That night, after dinner, I waited. I saw Mademoiselle Duval leave Madame's compartment around 10, overheard them arguing about some old affair. I slipped into the luggage car, used the service panel to reach the corridor. At 1 a.m., when the train was quiet, I entered her compartment with my master key, but I scratched the door frame in my haste, stupid mistake. She was drowsy from the sedative, barely stirred. I used the cord from my own bag, quick and silent. I left the earring, dropped the glove outside 16-2.2 Kessler, and fled back through the panel. Kessler's tick flared, his face ashen. "You tried to frame me," he muttered, his voice shaking. Lucien's lips curled in a bitter smile. "Your brother's name was useful, Kessler. I knew about his debts, heard Madame mention them in Paris. Once, the glove was mine, but I wanted it to look like you." Carlisle snorted, his fists clenched. "Damned coward, using us as pawns. And that scarf in the luggage car." Lucien's eyes flickered. "A mistake. It caught when I moved through the panel. I didn't realize it had my initials, old habit, embroidering my things." He looked at Poirot, his defiance crumbling. "You're too clever, Poirot. I thought I'd covered everything, but you saw through it." Poirot's expression was grave, his hands folded behind his back. "Not clever, monsieur, but methodical. The little grey cells, they see what others miss. The glove was too convenient, the earring too blatant. Your hatred for Madame Vandermeer blinded you to your own errors. And the cry I heard at 1:17 a.m., was it hers?" Lucien shook his head, his voice barely a whisper. "No, she made no sound. The sedative was strong. It must have been Jacques, stumbling in the luggage car. He nearly caught me, but I hid." Jacques, still holding Lucien's arm, flushed, his sallow face tight. "I told you, Monsieur Poirot, I heard a rustle, nothing more." Poirot nodded, his gaze softening briefly. "You did your duty, Monsieur Jacques, though fear kept you silent. But now the truth is out." He turned to the passengers, his voice steady. "Madame Vandermeer was a blackmailer, yes, but her crimes do not justify murder. Mademoiselle Duval, you hid your affair with her husband, fearing ruin. Monsieur Kessler, you concealed your brother's embezzlement, dreading exposure. Monsieur Carlisle, your land deals were shady, and you feared her knowledge. Each of you had motive, but Lucien Vasseur alone acted." Duval's eyes brimmed with tears, her composure shattered. "I hated her for what she knew, but I never wished her dead," she whispered. Kessler's tics subsided, his shoulders sagging. "Leonard's mess was mine to clean up. I paid what I could, but she wanted more." Carlisle's scowl softened, his voice gruff. "She had no right to meddle, but this is madness." Poirot's gaze returned to Lucien, now slumped in Jacques' grip. "You sought vengeance, monsieur, but you found only ruin. The police in Calais will take you, and justice will be served." Lucien's sobs quieted, his eyes hollow. "Do what you must, Poirot. I'm done running." Poirot signaled Antoine to fetch the train's security officer, a burly man who arrived swiftly, handcuffs in hand. As Lucien was led away, the lounge car fell silent, the passengers staring at the empty space where he had knelt. The storm outside broke, rain lashing the windows. A fitting elegy for the tragedy within. Poirot turned to the passengers, his voice soft but resolute. Mies Amos, this journey has revealed the fragility of secrets. You are free of Madame Vandermeer's threats, but not of your consciences. Reflect on this, and choose truth in the future. He withdrew to his compartment, his notebook open, and added a final entry. Lucien Vassar confesses. Motive, vengeance. Method, service panel. Sedative, cord. Case closed. Yet as he closed the book, a shadow lingered in his mind, not of doubt, but of sorrow. The blue train, with its gleaming facade, had carried a murderer, but also the weight of human failings. As Calais loomed, Poirot prepared to face the authorities, his duty fulfilled, but his heart heavy with the cost of truth. Chapter 13. The arrival. The blue train eased into Calais station with a sigh of steam. Its sapphire carriages glistening under the dim glow of platform lamps, slick with the rain that had pursued it through the storm. The journey, marked by the brutal murder of Madame Elisabeth Vandermeer and the unmasking of her killer. Lucien Vassar had reached its end, but the weight of the tragedy lingered like a fog. Hercule Poirot stood in the corridor of the first-class carriage, his polished shoes reflecting the faint light, his Homburg hat in hand. The passengers, Mademoiselle Clara Duval, Mr. Samuel Kessler, and Lord Edward Carlisle, were preparing to disembark, their faces etched with a mixture of relief and unease, their secrets laid bare, but their futures uncertain. The conductor's assistant, Jacques, and the head waiter, Antoine, moved through the carriage, their usual efficiency tempered by the shock of Lucien's betrayal. Poirot's little grey cells, though triumphant in solving the crime, were with a quiet melancholy. The confession of Lucien Vassar once, a trusted servant, driven to murder by a decade of resentment, had resolved the puzzle, but it revealed the corrosive power of vengeance. The Clouser black glove with its LVE monogram, the red scarf in the luggage car, the pearl earrings, the drugged wine glass, the scratched doorframe, the hidden service panel, the cryptic note, and the chloral hydrate vial head led to a truth as stark as the rain-soaked platform outside. Yet Poirot knew that justice, while served, could not undo the loss or heal the wounds of those entangled in Madame Vandermeer's web of blackmail. As the train came to a full stop, the platform buzzed with activity. Porters scurried with luggage. Carts, travellers huddled under umbrellas, and a contingent of French police, summoned by telegraph, waited near the first-class carriage. Their leader, a stern-faced inspector named Giraud, approached the train, his trench coat dripping. Poirot had crossed paths with Giraud before, a man of method but lacking imagination, and he braced himself for the inevitable clash of styles. Monsieur Poirot, Giraud said, tipping his hat with a grudging nod. I hear you've solved a murder before we even set foot on the train. Strangulation, was it? And the culprits in custody? Poirot inclined his head, his moustache twitching slightly. Oui, Monsieur l'Inspecteur. Lucien Vassar, posing as the conductor peer, has confessed to the murder of Madame Elisabeth Vandermeer. He is restrained in the staff car, ready for your men. The evidence, the murder weapon, the sedative, the stolen earrings preserved. For your examination. Giraud's eyes narrowed, a flicker of skepticism in his gaze. Very tidy, Poirot. Too tidy, perhaps. I'll need to see the scene and question the witnesses myself. Blackmail, you say? Motive enough, but I'll decide what holds up. Poirot's smile was serene but unyielding. As you wish, monsieur. The truth, it does not require my defense. You will find all as I have described. He gestured toward the carriage, where Jacques stood guard at the sealed compartment 14. His sallow face tight with nerves. Giraud barked orders to his men, who moved to secure the crime scene and escort Lucien from the train. Poirot watched as the former conductor, now handcuffed, was led onto the platform, his head bowed, his defiance drained. The passengers, emerging one by one, paused to stare, their expressions a mix of pity and revulsion. Mademoiselle Duval, her lavender dress hidden beneath a raincoat, clutched her valise, her emerald eyes avoiding Lucien's. Mr. Kessler, his tic subdued but his face drawn, adjusted his hat, the LV cufflinks no longer visible. Lord Carlisle, his tweed suit rumpled, muttered something about damned scandal and pushed past the crowd, eager to escape the train's shadow. Poirot remained, assisting Giraud's men with the transfer of evidence. The black silken cord, the wineglass, with its smudged lip rouge, the pearl earring, the glove, the red scarf, and the vial of chloral hydrate. He recounted the case briefly, emphasizing the service panel's role and Lucien's meticulous planning. Giraud listened, his pencil scratching notes, but his skepticism lingered. A clever scheme, he admitted, but I'll need to verify the panel's access and the sedative's source. You're sure no one else was involved? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Sure, monsieur. I am Hercule Poirot. The passengers had motives blackmail over secrets, but their alibis hold, and the clues point only to Vassar. You will find his locker in the staff car contains further proof. A receipt for the chloral hydrate, purchased under a false name. In London, Giraud grunted, a reluctant nod, his only concession. We'll take it from here, Poirot. You've done your part. Get some rest, you look like you need it. He turned to his men, barking orders, and Poirot stepped onto the platform. The rain a soft patter against his hat. The passengers dispersed, their figures fading into the crowd. Duval boarded a waiting car, her face turned away, perhaps bound for Paris to rebuild her tarnished career. Kessler lingered, speaking briefly with a porter, his shoulders slumped as if carrying his brother's legacy. Carlisle, already hailing a taxi, shouted instructions, his bluster a shield against the scandal that would follow. Poirot watched them go, his heart heavy with the knowledge of their frailty secrets that had fueled Madame Vandermeer's power and led to her doom. He approached Jacques, who stood near the train, his eyes fixed on the departing police. Van carrying Lucien. Monsieur Jacques, Poirot said, his voice gentle. You did well to speak of the rustle in the luggage car. Fear kept you silent, but truth prevailed. Be at peace. Jacques' sallow face flushed, his eyes brimming. I should have done more, monsieur, if I'd stopped him. Poirot placed a hand on his shoulder, a rare gesture. You could not know, mon ami. Evil hides well, but it cannot escape the little grey cells. He nodded farewell and turned toward the station, where a hotel awaited as he walked. The rain, a steady companion, Poirot reflected on the case. The blue train, with its gleaming elegance, had been a stage for human passions, greed, betrayal, vengeance. Lucien Vassar's hatred, nurtured over years, had culminated in a murder as calculated as it was cruel. The passengers, though spared, the gallows, carried their own burdens, their secrets exposed to the unforgiving light of truth. Madame Vandermeer, a blackmailer, had reaped the consequences of her power, but her death was no triumph, only a tragedy at the station's entrance. Poirot paused, glancing back at the train, its silhouette a dark jewel against the stormy sky. The last seat, compartment 16, had held no passenger, only a phantom born of Lucien's deception. The mystery was solved, the murderer caught, but Poirot felt no exultation. Justice was a cold comfort when measured against the cost of human lives. He adjusted his hat, straightened his tie, and stepped into the station, ready to face the formalities of the police report, his mind already turning to the next challenge, for where there were people, there would always be mysteries. Chapter 14. The reflection, the rain had ceased, leaving Calais bathed in a damp, silvery sheen as night settled over the port city. Hercule Poirot stood at the window of his hotel room, a modest but elegant suite overlooking the station where the blue train now rested, its sapphire carriages silent under the glow of arc lamps. The journey, marked by the murder of Madame Elisabeth van der Meer and the unmasking of her killer, Lucien Vassar, had concluded, but its echoes lingered in Poirot's mind. The clues: the black glove with its LV monogram, the red scarf, the pearl earrings, the drugged wineglass, the scratched door frame, the hidden service panel, the cryptic note, and the chloral hydrate. Vial had woven a tapestry of deceit, now unraveled by his relentless pursuit of truth. Yet the resolution brought no triumph, only a quiet sorrow for the frailties of those involved. Poirot adjusted the single rose in the vase on his desk, its petals a soft contrast to the stark reality of the case. His notebook lay open, its final entry a testament to the puzzle's solution. Lucien Vassar confesses. Motive, vengeance. Method, service panel, sedative, cord. Case closed, but closure, he knew, was a fleeting thing. The passengers, Mademoiselle Clara Duval, Mr. Samuel Kessler, and Lord Edward Carlisle had departed, their secrets exposed, their lives altered by the shadow of blackmail and murder. Lucien, now in the hands of Inspector Giraud and the French police, faced justice, but the cost of his vengeance weighed heavily on Poirot's heart. He sat at the desk, his polished shoes aligned precisely, and polished his Homburg hat with a silk cloth, a ritual that steadied his thoughts. The blue train had been a microcosm of human nature, its opulence a facade for greed, betrayal, and retribution. Madame van der Meer, a blackmailer wielding the secrets of others like a weapon, had met her end at the hands of a man she had ruined years before. Lucien Vassar, driven by a decade of festering resentment, had crafted a meticulous plan, booking the last seat as Vincent, using the service panel, planting false clues only to falter under the scrutiny of Poirot's little grey cells. The passengers, though innocent of murder, were complicit in their own deceptions. Duval's scandalous affair, Kessler's brother's embezzlement, Carlisle's shady dealings, each had danced on the edge of ruin, their motives laid bare, but their hands clean. Poirot's gaze drifted to the window, where the lights of Calais flickered against the dark. He thought of Duval, her emerald eyes haunted by the scandal that could still destroy her career, now boarding a train to Paris to face an uncertain future. Kessler, his nervous tic a constant companion, had slipped away quietly, perhaps to settle his brother's debts or to escape the shadow of suspicion. Carlisle, blustering and defiant, had roared off in a taxi, his wealth a shield against the whispers of scandal that would follow him to London. They were free, yet not unscarred, their secrets a burden they would carry beyond the train. The staff, too, had been touched by the tragedy. Jacques, the sallow-faced porter, had emerged from his fear to aid Poirot, his honesty a small redemption. Antoine, the head waiter, had served with impeccable professionalism, unaware of the poison in the wine he poured. Inspector Giraud, gruff and skeptical, would take credit for the arrest, but Poirot cared little for accolades. His satisfaction lay in the truth, not in glory. He opened his notebook again, flipping to an earlier page where he had jotted, "Madame V fears a shadow." The shadow had been Lucien, but also the darker impulses of those around her: greed, shame, vengeance. Poirot had seen such shadows before, in cases across Europe, and he knew they would rise again. Human nature, with its capacity for both brilliance and baseness, was his eternal adversary. A knock at the door interrupted his reverie. It was a telegram, delivered by a hotel porter from Inspector Giraud. "Vassar in custody. Evidence confirmed. Your assistance noted." Giraud Poirot's mustache twitched with a faint smile. Noted, indeed. He set the telegram aside, his thoughts returning to the case. The red scarf, with its faint LV embroidery, had been the final nail in Lucien's coffin, a careless oversight that betrayed his identity. The pearl earrings, stolen from Duval, had been a clever misdirection, as had the glove, meant to implicate Kessler. The drugged wine, the service panel, the scratched doorframe, all had pointed to a mind both cunning and desperate. Yet it was Poirot's methodical approach, his refusal to accept coincidence, that had brought the truth to light. He rose, crossing to the mirror to adjust his tie, its silver not a symbol of the order he cherished. The reflection showed a man, small in stature but formidable in resolve, his eyes bright with the fire of intellect. The blue train had carried him into a storm of human passions, and he had emerged with the truth, but at a cost. Madame Vandermeer's death was a reminder. That power, wielded without mercy, invited destruction. Lucien's vengeance, though executed with precision, had destroyed him as surely as it had his victim. Outside, the station was quiet. The blue train, now a silent relic of the journey's horrors. Poirot knew he would board other trains, solve other mysteries, but this case would linger a study in the fragility of honor and the price of secrets. He closed his notebook, its pages a record of justice served, and prepared for the next challenge. A letter awaited on his desk, another summons to a case in Nice, where a missing heiress promised new intrigues. He sighed, his fingers lingering on the rose's petals, and murmured, "The world, it does not tire of its secrets, none." With a final glance at the rain-slicked station, Poirot turned from the window, his resolve unbroken. The blue train had reached its destination, but, for Hercule Poirot, the pursuit of truth was a journey without end.